Good afternoon and welcome to the Polk County School Board's work session. We will now call the work session for June 9th, 2026 to order. Thank you to our staff who are available and accessible to help address any questions. I would like to start by reading our Who Are We statement. We are the Polk County Leadership Governance Team. If we were to pick one phrase to define us, it would be student-centered. Because when we come together to work, we lean on our diverse backgrounds and experiences to ensure that our decisions are focused on providing a high-quality education for all students. The four most important things to our governance team are operating with integrity, respecting our students, staff, families, and each other, establishing a culture where stakeholders feel valued, supported, and have opportunities for personal and professional growth, and supporting an approach of continuous improvement to ensure student outcomes. Collectively, we need to work on behalf of the children we serve and find avenues of agreement so that we can govern the district in an effective manner. There is no acceptable alternative. We will always collaborate in a respectful manner in order to enhance opportunities for each student and staff member. We will not disparage others. Our students will thrive because we will remain committed to supporting the whole child. We hope to engage and empower our students and stakeholders to create a community of lifelong learners. At this time, I would like to turn it over to our Chief of Schools, Tracy Collins, to lead us in our work session today.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I believe that we are going to get started. Candy Amato has the first two topics for us on charter 15-year renewals.
All right, good afternoon. So item number one is the Victory Ridge Academy contract. This came to the board at the last work session and board meeting for approval to renew their application for 15 years. And this is just simply the contract that's been negotiated between the district and the school.
Hi, Ms. Amato. Thank you. I just want to say in support of Victory Ridge, they do great work. I'm hoping they expand into the Lakeland area. I've talked to Stephen Whitaker multiple times. Victory Ridge is doing the medical model therapy that we are unable to provide students. So it is providing a service for students that they don't always access when they're with us. So I appreciate Victory Ridge and the work they do. Davenport is already very successful, and I look forward to their Lakeland campus. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions?
Okay, move on to item two. Okay, that's fine. All right, item number two is also a 15-year renewal. It is for Bridge Prep Academy of Polk. It's the current site that is already operating. It is also a 15-year renewal. I do want to bring it to your attention. When the renewal document came to the board, as presented by Bridge Prep, you all did vote and approve a 5-year renewal. However, once the contract was sent with the 5-year term, upon their review by their general counsel and their board, statute does allow them to ask for a 15-year contract. And the key word is must be granted. That is the word in statute. Because they earned a B during the last graded school year, statute does allow them to ask, and we must grant them 15 years. It was not presented to you during the initial presentation because Bridge Prep only asked for 5, so that's all we were giving them what they asked for. Upon review with counsel, with Mr. Green, we are obligated to give them the 15 years. We do have this supporting documentation from Bridge Prep's board, changing their request from 5 to 15.
Ms. Miller?
Thanks, Ms. Amato. I appreciate that you explaining the legislative piece of that. I'm curious to why they didn't know that piece of legislation when they first submitted, but updating it for the public is important. And so during that 15 years, my question is, can we offer support to schools that if the grade starts to decline, how does that work?
So we do provide some scaffolding support, but remember they do not follow our curriculum maps, but they are required to follow standards set by the state, just as we are. So we do provide some level of support, but our curriculum team does not go in there and support them.
Is there anything, because I've been asked about the 15 renewals, is there anything, in 15 years, a lot can happen. I mean, we have those schools change principals relatively often. So what for the community and for the parents and families, what is their action if the grade starts to slip in any school? I'm just curious. The 15-year renewal is it's a topic that's often talked about because that's such a large span of time. So what happens if something happens 10 years from now and the school grade is not, if it's in trouble, how can we assist those schools that are guaranteed the 15 years?
So they're required to complete a school improvement plan, much like our district schools are. So through that component, they have an educational service provider who offers support, much like a district office. They do have principals on assignment. They have a scaffolding support, kind of mirrors very similar to what the district has in regards to regionals and senior coordinators and senior directors that we offer support to our schools. Their education service provider has something very comparable.
Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. And I also appreciate your explanation on that. Has that always been the case with, can you give a little bit more information? Because that seems new. It used to be that they had to be a high-performing charter school, which they don't have that designation to my knowledge. So can you just give a little bit of history there?
Correct. So a high-performing charter school is a school that's been an A and B consistently. And then the state of Florida, the Department of Education, deems them high-performing. We do not make that justification. They receive a formal letter from the commissioner, and then at that point, things change. They're guaranteed a 15-year contract. They pay less charter school administrative fees, money that we collect for providing them services. That has always been the standard. This new component where they earn an A or B in the previously graded year is new. However, it does not change their charter service administrative fees. They still pay the required 5%, but it does give them the latitude to have a 15-year contract. So it kind of takes away from the high-performing status in regards to the being eligible for the 15 years because you're showing that you're consistent and doing something right. One school grade of an A or B, and then you get a 15-year contract seems a little...
So for any school, any charter school, as long as they get a B the year they're applying, it doesn't matter that
Correct.
they could get all Ds for the next 15 years and but when they come back, they couldn't get a 15, or is it they could always get a 15 after this?
No, it says the previously graded school year. The previously earned grade, I forget the exact language, but basically the prior year school grade was a B or an A, then yes, and they're applying for renewal, they can get a 15 years.
Okay, thank you.
There
And
are
that's
other-
not just for Bridge Prep.
No, there are some other components, like they have to be financially sound. There are some other components in there, but the school does not have any of those other issues, so.
Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Allen?
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Yeah, I mean, obviously a 15-year provides that significant stability for an organization. So, and I'm in support of that. Now, we do have a policy, right, 9800. This is where we have our charter renewal language in regards to the policy. So in that, so it's not just 15 years, right? In our policy, it notes the high stakes review, which happens every 5 years.
5 years.
Okay, so just want to make sure, and it's a comprehensive, in-depth, and this is what our policy language says, an evaluation of performance data against agreed upon goals. Okay, perfect. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Amato. I think the next agenda item we have is rule development for policy 5722, school-sponsored publications and productions. And we have Chad Davis and Teresa Griffin with us this morning.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Sharpless, board members, Madam Chief. First, before I begin, I want to just bring to your attention that the good news, we had received $2 million in Congresswoman Lee's community projects request. It's now in the budget. It's just a matter of hopefully Congress will fund the budget this year. But we are sending some thank yous, and I believe a card has been made available. So if you could have that ready, we'd be happy to send that off to their office. Today, I'm going to actually present this policy because I have a presentation that goes along with it. This is a new policy, and it covers some aspects of First Amendment law. And so to give some background, and I hope the PowerPoint has been updated since yesterday when I added those extra slides to it. This policy, 5722, school-sponsored publications and productions, was sent to us in 2021 by Neola. And in the process of when we were updating all of our policies, This one never got adopted because if you recall, right after COVID, there was an explosion of technology being used. There were concerns, we were working through data privacy agreements. We met with Ms. Pasco and others to talk about the technology piece and how we were going to manage all of that. Since then, we've had some laws that have come along regarding social media and other use of technology, and we've gotten a firmer grasp on how we handle student publications and productions. What I will be presenting to you today, if you've noticed, that there were 9 pages of options for a 1.5-page policy. Lots of possibilities here. What we are presenting to you is actually what we are currently doing in our schools. So with that being said, I'm going to walk you through my presentation. Okay. So this new policy, it covers all student media, it covers student media and technological advances that are present in our school today. It encompasses new online electronic forms of student-sponsored student media and provides direction for the classification of these publications and productions. This policy is it's a catch-all. It covers all of these publications and productions. So it's going to have lots of definitions, and it's going to explain how we treat these. We treat them all as district-controlled educational activities and not open public platforms. I'll explain in a second the distinction in our forums and why we're choosing to be a non-public forum. It establishes these activities as non-public forums by default with routine systematic prior review and viewpoint neutral administration, and it limits the publication performance ordinarily to the school community unless the superintendent, remember the capital S superintendent means the superintendent or his designee, which oftentimes at the school base would be the principal or another administrator, and it authorizes broader access for a specific publication or production. So what do we mean by school-sponsored student media? This is going to include both student publications, print and electronic, such as banners, flyers, posters, pamphlets, notices, newspapers, playbills, yearbooks, literary journals, books, and school-sponsored clothing, for example, t-shirts. For student productions and performances, this includes all of our traditional, what we think of, the vocal, musical, and theatrical performances, but it also will include electronic media, including our radio and television programs, if we have any video blogs or podcasts or any of those other audiovisual video productions. The proposal distinguishes a school-sponsored student media from other student expression in classes not directly associated with student publications and productions. So I'm going to give you the legal background now on why that's important. If you've been around education long enough, you've heard of the Tinker case, the Tinker versus Des Moines, and the Hazelwood case, Hazelwood versus Kohlmeyer. These are the 2 Supreme Court landmark decisions that kind of give us our boundaries when it comes to student expression and free speech. The Tinker case, that was from 1969. It dealt with students wearing Vietnam armbands as a peaceful protest. And the ruling says that schools generally may not restrict student speech unless it would materially and substantially disrupt school operations or invade the rights of others. This is where you've heard the phrase, students do not shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. In 1989, we have the Hazelwood case. This is a case where a principal tried to remove 2 articles from a student newspaper, and one of them including about teenage pregnancies where it named students. And the principal removed those as being inappropriate. The students sued on First Amendment grounds, and we get the Hazelwood concept, the ruling. When speech is part of a school-sponsored activity that could be seen as bearing the school's approval, the school may exercise editorial control if reasonably related to legitimate educational or pedagogical concerns. And the key word we take from that they use, schools have greater authority to control speech that bears the imprimatur of the school and is inconsistent with its educational mission. So if it has the bearing of the school approves of this, the school is supporting this, then we get to control what that message is. This policy is designed to place school-sponsored media in the Hazelwood style category rather than an open student soapbox. Now let's talk about forums. There are 3 legal forums that are recognized. You got public forum, that's a space the government keeps open for broad public speech. The restrictions in a public forum are the hardest to justify. These are usually going to be designated by a government as a public forum. You think of like public sidewalks and parks and places where they create a free speech zone, if you will. Then you have a limited public forum, and that's a space open only for certain speakers or topics. The government can enforce those limits if applied consistently and without viewpoint discrimination. Limited public forums, typically some of your public government meetings are going to have more of a limited public forum where, you know, you're going to open up for public comment and you're going to hear what you're going to hear. You can't even restrict it to specific agenda topics. You know, we have 2 public comments, the one that's open to the public. They can say what they want to say. Where we can restrict it in a viewpoint neutral way is we can limit it, you know, no obscenity, no insults, no directing at individual people, those kind of viewpoint neutral concepts. Non-public forum, that is a space kept for a specific purpose. And here it's education. The government can impose reasonable, purpose-based rules applied in a viewpoint neutral way. A lot of non-public forums would include, you know, proceedings of the government that are tied to a very specific, you know, your courtrooms, for instance. You're not going to have people coming in there and having free speech rights. It's going to be very tailored to the case there. And in our schools, we get, for school-sponsored stuff, we're designating this as a non-public forum. The reason you have 9 pages of options is because Neola gave us options if we wanted to create limited public forums. Some school districts are a little more comfortable with that. They're a little more comfortable with the comment section, for instance, on a production on online or something. Here, we have maintained that anything that is school sponsored, that's going to have our name on it, that we're, you know, that we are backing, we're going to have that review in what's going out. The forum status matters because it affects how much editorial control the district can exercise over student expression in that channel. So, those options we chose were specific to create this non-public forum. I'm going to give you some of the criteria we put in place for this. The scope, it covers classroom, curricular, and extracurricular and club-related school-sponsored publications and productions, including broadcast and recorded media. Prior review, this is important. School officials will routinely and systematically review content before publication performance and may restrict content for legitimate educational reasons applied neutrally as to viewpoint. For a non-public forum, it's important that our staff, our designated approvers, are approving consistently. This is not a, we let it go until there's a problem, then we come back and we review and decide, we're going to pull that. No, it's going to be, you know, if it's a club, the club sponsor is going to be reviewing that. If it's a theatrical production, the teacher that's overseeing that will be the one reviewing it. You know, and think about it, you know, students are not going to be the ones picking what plays they're putting on. You know, that's going to be done from a pedagogical standpoint. Distribution and audience control. School sponsor media is ordinarily limited to the school community. I put an asterisk, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. Then reinforcing that it's not open to the public at large. This restriction, this definition of school community, and we're going to talk again about how we define that, that's in there in order to establish that this is a non-public forum. If we were to change that and say generally open to the public, we are inching closer towards that limited public forum. And that'll be a discussion for you all to have and the direction for you to give us. But we chose this because as it currently stands, you know, we're maintaining the non-public forum and our ability to restrict, and I'll get to that here in a second. Advertising, it's permitted but reviewable for juvenile appropriateness and other legitimate educational safety reasons unrelated to the advertiser's viewpoint with final authority in the superintendent or the superintendent's designee. This complies with our current advertising policy. And platform controls, social media related to student productions is prohibited. Only district-approved platforms may host school-sponsored student media. That's the nuance there is we're not allowing students to kind of create the social media content or whatever, but if there is content and we have district-approved sites, they can then host that content, if you understand that distinction. Now let's talk about the school community. Keeping the audience to an authorized school community helps preserve the non-public forum character by preventing the channel from functioning like an open public platform. The superintendent or designee may expand who is included in the school community for a particular publication or production when educationally appropriate, including authorizing access by the general public. The superintendent or designee may define the school community for that particular production or publication to be open to the general public as part of the school community. This is not where they have to be appealed to each time by the students, which the policy allows for that appeal process. It is something they can designate from the very beginning. And I'll explain here in a second some of the reasons why we may not always want to do that. This case-by-case authorization supports consistency. The district can keep most school-sponsored media internal while selectively sharing certain productions and publications externally without converting the entire program into an open forum. So examples where it would make sense. Including the public makes sense for a ticketed spring musical, a band concert, a theater production intended as a community-facing capstone experience. Public attendance can align with arts education goals and community engagement when authorized. Excluding the public makes sense for internal student newspaper, yearbook-style publication or broadcast that includes student names and photos, school-specific issues or content intended for students and families. Limiting access reduces privacy, safety risk, and keeps the channel purpose limited. So, we already function this way. School newspapers are not delivered around the community at the coffee shops. They're kept internally with the campus. Doesn't mean that we can't do that if we wanted to, but those are things that are going to be more internal. Our theatrical productions, our musical performances, those are things we generally open to the public, and we will continue to do so because the public would be defined as part of the school community for those productions. And with that, any questions?
Ms. Wyatt, you're recognized.
Thank you. And thank you for your responses. I had a lot of questions on this policy. Because originally, I think there was a box checked that was that it was backwards. So I was trying to figure out why one and not the other. And I greatly appreciate the limiting some of the things that we're posting on social media. I do have concerns that we are currently posting some of our school broadcasts on social media that, as a parent, it makes me really uncomfortable, even just to think that my kids, when they get to the K-12 level, if I want them to participate in ITV, they can only do so if they're allowed to be posted online, is essentially how it presents at this point. How are we regulating that? Because I know of at least 2 schools that do post their morning broadcast on social media, which then all of that information, all of those students are out in the world every day.
Well, this policy is a first step.
Okay.
For sure. That is one reason why we needed this policy. This conversation came up a few months ago during the student-led walkouts where there were some concerns. It wasn't really with Polk County, but across the state and the country, there were concerns about student newspapers and students writing editorials about why students should do this and kind of encouraging this kind of stuff. And the question that we were asking around Florida with the attorneys was, what can we do to limit that? It's not disruptive yet. It could be, but it's not yet. Is this how we use our newspapers to promote ideas that are going against school policy? And as we were looking at ours, we realized, we don't have a policy in place because this one never got all the way through because of all the technology concerns, which now have kind of been worked out for us with other subsequent technology policies.
And I think, originally when we first presented this, we had several schools that were posting their school news shows because they were not on campus. So that was the only way for students to watch them. It was before we had Schoology, truly in the throes of COVID, for those of you that were here and have a little bit of PTSD like I do. But I'm glad that we're looking to lock it down. My other question, and I spoke with Mr. Green a little bit about this last night, as we look at our performances that are open to the community, I have more and more concerns with how many pictures get posted of your 5th grade chorus concert that has every student up there. There's several laws that have been passed recently in Florida, specifically looking at some of our foster students, those types of populations. I know Heartland for Children can no longer post pictures of any foster students up for adoption because we don't want, with AI now, you can upload a picture of a child and they can take you to every other picture of the child on the internet and find them in that school photo. And now the mom that's not allowed to have contact has a picture of their child and knows that they're in a Scott Lake Elementary t-shirt, and so they must go to Scott Lake Elementary. So when we look at those types of privacy issues, is there anything we can do? Anytime you go, I worked in a theater for 7-8 years. Anytime you go to the theater, they say no photography or video during the performance. Is there anything we can put into policy to prevent, when we do have open forums, to not take pictures during the performances, to make sure we're not taking other students? Take pictures outside with your friends that have permission, that's great, but it just is concerning to me that we're posting kids that don't have permission. My favorite example, and Superintendent Hyde knows I lost my mind a couple weeks ago because we had a school, didn't post any pictures of kids, but said, hey, we had our 5th grade ceremony yesterday. Post all the pictures that you took, parents. And so now they didn't post any pictures of kids, but every parent is posting the full stage with every student, several of which are not allowed to be posted on the internet. So
So I
How do we
think
solve that?
we can look at that if we want to add language about, in school-sponsored productions and publications, that the superintendent has the authority to restrict the use of video and photography or something along those lines. That would then allow us to have some control over that. We can put up signs, we can make announcements and all that, but I think tying it to a policy is not a bad idea. And that would fit within a non-public forum. We can hold to that because it's a non-public forum, we have that ability to restrict that. I think that's a good idea.
I have one every now and then.
Thank you, Ms. Wyatt. Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Davis. This is great information. I just am curious how we're going to get it to staff and schools, because you have schools who are, for Harrison, because I'm a parent of Harrison, they want to bring back their school newspaper, like in print. But as schools want to reintroduce different medias, how will they be able to access this to understand the limitations? Or will this be information that we provide to them one time? Okay. Because I think that's most important.
So if this were to become policy, that would then be my responsibility as long as Mr. Davis. And so that would be part of our back to school principals meeting and training. He does share legislative and policy updates with them. And then the regionals are responsible for supporting that and ensuring that that's executed at the school.
It's funny you should ask, because the reason we brought this forward was I was asked to do that training and presentation this summer, and I said, oh, we don't have a policy. So this was the first step in preparing for the training, and that is scheduled for this July. Part of my presentation is already finished, except for I've got a lot of blanks because I don't know yet where we're going to land on the policy. So hopefully with your, we'll get some more conversation here. We'll kind of have an idea where we're going to land on this. But if we do go with the non-public forum with the greatest amount of control, then that will be how I will be able to approach it, and we'll train them. And this will be an ongoing thing this next year that we'll be working with our schools.
The other thing I'll say about this policy is Mr. Davis and I worked quite closely together on presenting this to you. We were able to identify our practice that we do now and some of the options that may be too restrictive based on how we operate, and then some places that we felt like we needed to tighten up a little bit. And that's this policy that he brings forth today is a collaboration between the two of us.
Thank you. And I just have one other thing. I mean, I do understand the concerns from how children will be seen. Unfortunately, as technology keeps evolving, we're not going to be able to keep up with that. And you also have parents who share social media for families and people that aren't in town. Like we're going to hear back from parents if we lock it down where they can't see anything that happened at their school that day. So there is a balance to that. How often will we revisit this with new technology? I mean, is this something you review annually? Because I'm assuming as soon as we make policy, there'll be another way it'll be approached a different direction.
Yeah, it was written broadly to try to capture, but of course, when new things come up, we'll revisit it. I think one solution to the concern here for that balance is we need to take a look at the participants in these programs and make sure that we're getting the full parental consent with the information going to the parents that we can't control if pictures are being taken of your child in this instance because of how public it is. And in those instances, they're basically consenting, they're signing a waiver to allow, their images to be out there. In other instances where we have a smaller, say it's just a 5th grade class or something, and, we wanted to restrict it a little bit more, even if we restricted it just to families, then we could then announce to them, please, we ask that no pictures, because some students in here, for their privacy's sake, we don't want to share that with everyone. So there are some things we can do depending on the scope of it. I think when we're dealing with something that's as public as a theater production, students get involved, that they know the public's coming to that. So there is sort of an expectation that is going to be more open to the public. And that is something where I think on our end, we need to make sure we have those waivers and informed parental consent in place to begin with. So if there are any concerns, we can deal with it. We wouldn't restrict a student's access to those just because of that. We'd have to find other ways to involve them, or maybe find, I don't know, just look at how we might be able to protect them. But yeah, that is definitely a balancing. We're certainly not looking to stop parents from taking pictures of their kids. We're just trying to think ahead of how do we protect those other students that have some privacy concerns who are also part of our community.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chair Sharpless.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for presenting this, and Ms. Griffin for all your work on it as well. My question is on the advertising portion of this towards the end. It looks like option 3 is selected on page 9, which is advertising is not permitted in school-sponsored student media. And I have a concern with that. I'm thinking, how do we fund things like yearbooks or, I've been to different plays where they have, programs that have ads in it. I certainly, at least the copy that I have had option 3 is the one selected. I would just be in favor of option 1 or 2. I don't want to prohibit advertising it at all. I mean, there's certainly, let me be very clear. There is guidelines we should, and there's certain kind of advertising we should not put into our school-sponsored media. However, I would not be in favor of prohibiting it completely.
I apologize, Chair. The dirty version with all the options, that was also another mistake. If you
Okay.
look at the clean version, we
Okay.
changed it. That was a meeting that.
Yeah, I was looking at the one with all the
That
options.
was after we had a meeting about that, and that
Okay.
was discussed. And the clean version says advertising is permitted in all school-sponsored student media. Any advertisements must be consistent with policy 9700.01. Submitted for publication or inclusion in a production shall be reviewed by the class activity advisor or school officials as determined by the principal for a determination they are appropriate for juveniles. The superintendent retains the final authority to determine whether advertisement is appropriate and will be included in publication or production.
That sounds great to me. I was confused there because I was looking at the one with the options. So
We had multiple versions going back and forth. And,
Okay.
and, we wanted to include the option version because we know you like to see what's out there, but the clean version was to try to give you a clearer understanding of what the policy is actually doing.
and I appreciate that. Thank you. You made it very clear.
And we will make sure that the clean version is what's at the public hearing so the public has a full understanding as well what you're voting on.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Every yearbook sponsor out there.
Yeah.
You're their favorite person. Yes, we did speak about that. Truly, we would not be able to produce yearbooks in such.
That was my big concern.
So, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next, Dr. Allen.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Mr. Davis, good conversation. It's good to hear perspectives from other board members as well. I don't know, I think I was going to jump off of maybe Ms. Miller's thoughts a little bit as it relates to Harrison, and just in general, just thinking about the rift or the tension between like editorial content and artistic expression. So, and making sure that, obviously I teach in the visual arts as well, and then, a lot of us value the arts as well. How can we make sure that maybe subjective interpretation would not suppress artistic expression? And, obviously themes can be controversial in a sense, and those are prompts that would be given, and then expression happens. And then I'm thinking about distribution channels as well in this. So you note a couple things, like capstone work and so forth, but I was thinking, okay, how does this apply to like exhibition at the AGB, which isn't necessarily on one of our school sites, or film festival distribution, where students, built a project in a sense that's going out to a public venue, like a film festival in a sense. So do we lose editorial constraint, in those particular situations and so forth? So I don't know I guess my question is, how can we make sure that there's, like subjective standards aren't used to censor artistic expression in the midst of this one?
Well, I think first, viewpoint discrimination always is going to apply. So a viewpoint will not be something that can be taken into consideration. I think the challenge is you basically have two extremes. Either the teacher picks the play or the student picks the play. To balance that, you'd have to trust your teacher. Maybe if that's where you want to go and you want to have more student involvement, the teacher says, here's a list of plays for you to pick from. Otherwise, we're going to have Hair, Rocky Horror Show, whatever the kids decide to do, and we have no control over it, and then we got a mess on our hands. But I think there is an element of trust and expectations from our staff that they respect that, the students in that regards. And I would say that, until we have a problem, maybe it's best to go with this, and then if we have a problem, revisit it in the future.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, just wanting to, for us to think about some of those other distribution channels besides, theatrical performance or something like that. So that's why I was sort of bringing that up as well. All right, that's all I have, Ms. Collins.
Thank you. Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for recognizing that we're not going to limit student participation based on their ability to have a forum. Several years ago, when I was helping to run Youth Leadership Winter Haven, we went into a school that was not one of ours, and students, because our kids were in the room and they were wanting to take pictures of our kids in the room, they made 3 or 4 kids go to a different classroom and couldn't participate in the activity because they wanted to get pictures, which is not fair to the kids who did nothing wrong. They just can't have their picture online. So I greatly appreciate you recognizing that we are not going to limit students who can't participate. Because realistically, a lot of those students that have the forum, there are very specific reasons they have the forum. It's not like my kids that it will just be a preference. It's kids that are in foster care, kids that are, have been adopted and have people looking for them. So I greatly appreciate not restricting kids because of that. I wanted to add, Dr. Allen was talking about film festivals and things like that, and I think it probably would be appropriate for us to develop a standalone form that's not the blanket, my kid can be posted anywhere, but hey, my kid's in ITV, we have the opportunity to submit this to this festival that parents can sign off that it can be used for this specific purpose. We don't want to post it all over the internet by the school, but if it is related to this, that's okay. They can have an art in whatever art presentation that it can be signed on a case-by-case basis as opposed to just a blanket, you can use my kid's picture anywhere.
I can tell you, Mr. Green and I love good form.
And then my last thing, I did have a question on, so the taking pictures public forum, is that something that you all will work on that language, or is that something that I need to get with either
work
you or
on that.
Mr. Green?
We'll
And that'll
make a
come back to us
proposal.
in July?
Yeah, we'll make a proposal. I think what we would do is come up with the language that we think would fit what you're looking for. And then when it comes back in July, if you want to make a motion to amend to add it, and we can put it on the work session under, just like we're doing today, under unfinished business. So we can walk through it all, make sure it's exactly what you're looking for, take any concerns, and then you can just make a motion to amend it on the floor during public hearing.
And then my last question would be, because it won't come up for a vote before the first day of school, if I have my math right, I want to make sure that you all can use, Teresa's correcting me.
Well, I want to make sure that I'm clear too, because right now it's scheduled for Mr. Green to ask for authority to advertise tonight for public hearing and vote. July 28th, I think, is the meeting, because we have 30 days.
Okay.
But if we're saying we want to bring it back to work session in July and not put it on public hearing, then you're correct that it won't be before the first day of school. But the way it is now, it could be before the first day of school.
Let me, if there's no objections, we could do it back to back and get it done in July. The feedback I'm hearing from you all is that you're fine with the non-public forum concept. If there's things you want to tinker around with, that's fine. But if we're in consensus with non-public forum, then we'll go ahead with our training in July and make sure we start implementing that. And if there are any other nuances, we can come back and retrain as necessary. But I think what we're trying to tell our staff is that you have editorial control and responsibility, and we need to have a systematic way for you to be reviewing that, and that it's a catch-all policy, but where it's going to be different for each publication and production category and how we deal with that. And of course, we'll be working with our staff to get all those distinctions down too.
Is the training in July before or after our July board meeting?
Principals
The
meeting?
23rd.
Okay, it's before, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's very high level. It doesn't, so if, unless you all decide, we're just gonna let students have this freedom, then my presentation on non-public forum will be very much what I just gave you without getting into the nuances of the policy. So if you make some distinctions there, we can still come back and follow that up with more training procedures, memos, whatever we need. But I can still give the basic information that we're controlling school-sponsored publications and productions as non-public forum where, because of pedagogical reasons, we have that control to review and approve.
My preference would be because it sounds like whether we approve it in July or approve it in August, either way, the training is going to be beforehand. My personal preference would be not to bring it back to back unless we're going to get the revisions like the first week in July to be able to review them more intently than the
Good chance
6
you won't.
days that we have between the time they're posted Tuesday and the board meeting Tuesday, would be my preference. But if we can get it early, then I'm not opposed to bringing it back to back. But my preference would be not to bring it back to back unless we can get it early.
I think it's something we probably could get to you pretty quickly, but I don't want to speak out of turn until we've had a chance to really review it. So we'll try to get it to you before July. If not, I know we all also have some travel coming up soon. So if not, then that's fine. And that's perfectly reasonable timeline too, to not do it back to back. Make sure you've worked through it all and are comfortable with the policy language.
Thank you.
And for that matter, if we're not comfortable with moving forward as this being part of, this is not the only training. As I said, he does all kinds of policy and legislative updates. We could table this one until we come to resolution on what our policy is going to be, and we can train it at another principals meeting. It would be optimal to do it before school starts, but not necessary. Okay, thank you. And Ms. Miller.
I just want to say, partially because Mr. Levine is in the audience, I see, but this is about relationship building where students feel that they're heard. We can't control the dozens of social media accounts that go up, especially on Instagram, that are not from our school, that have our school logos. But you can tell the schools that really try to work with the students, they feel like they have a voice, because try telling a teenager, I'm the adult because I said so. That doesn't work out well in social media these days. And so for our principals, like Mr. Duget and Mr. Levine, who were able to make that relationship conversation with the students happen, so they always feel like they can come to them and they're heard, that's a leadership quality that I think we need to make sure that we promote in our schools, because that just helps put out the fires before they start. So I just wanted to say that piece. We can legislate, and you know this, we can legislate people to death. It doesn't mean it's going to be followed if we don't build those relationships. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay. We are going to move on to the next item. That is high school BBB standalone builders insurance risk policy. Ms. King, welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Green, Board Chair, and Madam Chief, thank you for your time this afternoon. Wanted to talk a little bit about the, I'm trying to remember how to turn this again. Here we go. The button. Purpose of builder's risk insurance. It is mostly property policy, and basically it's during the time of construction. So, as you know, at the time we take control of an asset is when it comes on our property policy. And it also covers unforeseen man-made exposures such as fire, arson, water damage, as well as natural hazards, which are hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods. For this project, the full value of the project will be exposed during the 28 hurricane season, because it's supposed to open in August of 28. So during that time is when we'll be in the full swing of the hurricane season. So this policy protects against the hurricane losses while substantial values are at risk. I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between bonds and contract and insurance. So the contract and bonding provisions protect the district from certain issues such as construction defects, negligence by the contractor, or failure to finalize the project. Builder's risk is different in that it mitigates any of the financial risks associated to the school board. And it's if those unforeseen issues occur that I mentioned earlier. And those things can be anything from if a tornado hits a roof and then part of it was already done, do we need a structural engineer to take a look at it? Because a little bit different than the initial design, we're not sure, we've got to redo some things. So there are costs associated with that as well. So the reasons we do owner-provided coverage are really due to cost savings more than anything else, okay? So it's typically included in general conditions in most of your projects for insurance, and it's typically a markup associated with that. FEMA eligibility, this is very important, and I've actually had a claim in my past life where we actually had a wall come down when a building was being built during a construction project. So since we owned the policy, the school board did, we were able to claim the deductible and get reimbursed. Control of coverage, we control what we actually buy. So we can decide if we want some of those soft costs included. We only need hard costs, which are the materials. So we can decide what we need and what we don't need. Continuity, I don't foresee this being a problem in this district, but if we had different contractors come and go associated with the policy, we own the policy, so the policy is the same irregardless. Dedicated project policy limits. This is the other part that's kind of important. All your insurance is written on the risk that you're underwriting, right? So if a contractor brings in his entire book of business possibly for that year, that can be at different parts of the country, different parts of the state, and could all be commingled as far as risks and costs. In this case, it's on our policy limits, our area. We also, as well, were able to get a 3% hurricane wind deductible with this as well, which is incredible because most are at least 5%. So we don't share limits with other parts of the country, which I think is the important piece there. So that's pretty much it. Questions or comments for me?
Ms. Wallace?
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
I would just, in light of yesterday's current events, I'm glad to see earthquakes are covered.
Yes. I can tell you, I didn't feel it. I know some people said they did. I didn't. So anyway.
Because that's not something or as a native Floridian, I'm used to
No.
thinking about. What I did want to know, and please forgive me if this isn't the right area, but one thing that is very Floridian and very Polk County is sinkholes. How is that accounted for?
Yeah, sinkhole coverage is typically included. It's usually a sublimit,
Okay.
so it'd be limited to a certain amount.
Is that, well, and I just as a layperson, I searched the policy for the word sinkhole and didn't see that. So is that
Okay.
represented in another way?
I can verify with the broker. I'll
Right.
double check that for you
Okay.
and get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Sharpless?
Thank you. Thank you for being here to present this. I noticed the policy term's 26 months.
Yes.
Expiring August 1, 2028.
Yes, correct.
That's our, hopefully, cross our fingers, projected. Some carriers offer a 30 to 90-day automatic extension. I noticed that STAR's extension beyond 3 months requires a rate to be agreed upon at that time. So what happens if our construction's delayed? Is there some sort of contingency plan if the certificate of occupancy is delayed past that August 1st deadline?
Certainly, we have a 90-day extension automatically agreed upon rate already set because obviously we'll be in the middle of prime wind season at that point. So that 90 days from August 1 is already set aside for us at a certain policy amount, okay? Anything beyond that would require us to negotiate something up front rather than later. So if you do want it beyond 90 days, I would need to explore that cost with the broker if we thought that was going to be an issue.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
because otherwise you're out according then to the new market, right? Which means it's whatever the cost would be at that point for the additional time beyond 90 days. So,
All right. Well, thank you. I wanted to know
Sure.
what was the plan. So then
Yeah.
certainly, I'm sure Superintendent Hyde and the cabinet and everyone can get together and potentially talk about that.
Yeah.
But what will we need it? I mean,
we used
I don't
90
know.
days. We used
Because,
90 days thinking that was going to be judicious enough.
I mean, I don't, last time I had a question about Aloma, we found out that, the federal government hadn't approved it at that time. And so I just don't know if there's more delays than we expect. If we're waiting on someone else's timeline, that might be something to consider. And
Okay.
But I appreciate your honesty and transparency. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Keys?
If I can follow up with Mr. Sharpless's statement, we have the possibility for an extension of 90 days. Is there a possibility to have another extension behind that one?
Absolutely.
So I would say
Yeah.
for the comfort thereof, we may not need more than 90, but if we have an option already in place for an additional 90, I can't imagine a scenario, but I would hope there wouldn't be a scenario we'd have to extend past 180.
Okay.
But I think it would be some level of comfort to be able to say we have the option to extend 90, and if we're still not completed by then, we have an option to extend for an additional 90.
Okay.
At
So
whatever
we're really looking at
pre-negotiated
getting
cost.
You're really talking then about getting through the entire wind season then, probably.
That's what I would say. Yeah, because that's the most important part of the builder's risk. I mean, let's be honest, that's our
risk.
biggest risk during that time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there have been fires and other things that have happened with other districts, but I haven't had anything. Flooding's another possibility as well. It could be a line
don't say.
or something, anything like that can happen, so. But, yes, those are the greatest risks.
No other questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Florida Job Growth Grant Fund Control Tower Operator Workforce Program Expansion. That's a long one. Ms. Bennett?
Thank you, Chair Sharpless and board members and Chief Collins for having us today. We're here to share with you the Travis expansion. We'd like to apply for a grant to be able to expand, and I'm going to let Ms. Webster go over the overview.
Okay. So this grant would allow us to purchase additional equipment. We already have a really nice control tower simulator. This grant would allow us to purchase some additional materials to go with that simulator and to buy a whole additional simulator. And then it also would allow us to hire a second instructor because we are nearing capacity. It's a very high interest program. We've had 6, I think we just hit 7 graduates that have been, they're getting employed in the field. But we are getting to the point quickly where we can't take any more without another instructor, so.
And there's workforce need. You have a presentation if you need to preview that. And our current capacity, as she mentions, at 22 students. So does anybody have any questions?
Several.
Oh.
Several. So we'll begin, Mr. Sharpless.
Webster, for being here to present this. I got to tell you, it's something I'm super excited about. I think it sets us apart when you talk about school districts, when you talk about being competitive. Programs like this, programs like CFAA, that is what, they don't have that in other areas. And so I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's going to, I mean, when you talk about the demand that's there, it puts us on the cutting edge. This is the kind of thing we need to be doing. So thank you both for your hard work in presenting this to us. Thank you.
And Mr. Keys?
I'm just going to echo what Mr. Sharpless said. Really, really excited about this. For not only the opportunities it gives to our students, but 2 other reasons. I love when I hear the word grant, or to be grant funded. So that's not something that we're funding out of our budget. But number 2, to hear about that we're at capacity at a program and we have to expand because of the interest that our students are showing in that. So I've had many, many conversations with shareholders in our community about these programs and what they mean to us, especially at this local level. I think about the news of the remote controlled, air traffic towers and how we are, educating students before that even came about. Right, is exciting to me. So keep up the good work. I'm excited about this and look forward to hearing that we received the grant.
Yes, thank you.
Us too.
There you go. And Dr. Allen?
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate the same things that they're saying. Very excited about this. We'll definitely enthusiastically support it. I would say in general, and I'd share this with the superintendent as well, and I'll just put it on record, that I would love for these to be rolled into our capital improvement plan in some way. And I think Travis and Ridge, they historically have not been on our 5-year capital improvement plan. And I think strategically, and I will continue to hark on that. But in general, I'm just really excited. I was just last week, had a company from Utah, Uplift Aerospace, who was in, I think he connected with an individual here in the room as well. And I had connected him to ACE and then our CFAA as well. And he's been all over the state looking at aerospace programs. And by far, he said, Polk is far superior to any, as far as infrastructure in regards to other aerospace programs around the state of Florida. And we know this as well, so it's great to hear from other voices. And I mean, Uplift Aerospace was the name of the organization. They're, connected to NASA, Blue Origin, and some pretty prominent names as well. So definitely will be very enthusiastic around this one as it comes forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Ms. Miller?
Hi, I just have a couple of questions. One, will this grant cover the needs to update or improve, or is this the one-time?
It's a one-time grant that you can reapply for. So
think
we
that's-
would continuously reapply if we were to obtain the grant. It's a state-funded grant as well.
Thank you. Yeah, because we do, we've had other programs where I've seen beautiful robotics equipment that has laid in a classroom and died.
Right.
Because it wasn't funded to keep it up. And so I think it is very important that we plan for that. I visited the air traffic control classroom with Leadership Bartow, and I was impressed by all of that. And we did hear about the graduates. So you're saying the second instructor, would it increase the student count over the 22? Yes. Okay, so what would be the max that could?
I think it's actually 24 per instructor.
Okay, so you could double the class.
And it's rolling, so as one leaves, we try to get a new student.
And it's only 1 year program, is what I understand.
Correct.
Okay, and when they're placing them around the country, which is another opportunity to promote, because I think I was talking to some of the younger people who were looking to go live in the wilderness somewhere, and I thought, wow, good for you.
We have
One of our graduates is going to Alaska.
Alaska, yes. And you know what? That's attractive. Not to me, but to others. And so part of our branding of this program is when people think air traffic control, they think they're going to go work. I learned more about the program to understand that not only are we providing them, you could go work for the FAA and the international airports, but a lot of the need is within the private, smaller sector, rural airports. So I think this will help us expand the program, but I also think that we need to work on promoting the opportunity because it will grow as fast as we can bring instructors, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller and Ms. Wallace.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, both Ms. Webster and Ms. Bennett. I just wanted to share my excitement. Another layer that is already happening but will grow in the future is given our proximity to Sun Tracks and that we're going to be seeing literally flying taxis. So it's going to be basically Uber for helicopters. And so air traffic control is no longer going to be at our big airports or for commercial travelers or, piggybacking on Ms. Miller, that the need for people to control or be part of the controlling aspect of what is in the air, as well as drones and everything else. It's going to look much different probably 5 to 10 years from now from what we see today. So thank you. And I also know too, I've read this in the Wall Street Journal, but I've also heard about it directly, is that programs like this compel families to move from all over America to Polk County. And so as a Polk County kid, I grew up hearing about families that would move here so their kid could play in a sport program that we had. And the thought of someone moving here for an academic program would have been wild to me as a kid. And now to think that we're literally attracting people from out of state to come here already and then to expand these programs, that's how we should be thinking in this 21st century era of competition. So well done, kudos, happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, ladies. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is athletic fees for non-enrolled students. Coach Talbot is going to walk us through that.
All right. I moved here for athletics too. Thank you, Ms. Collins. Thank you to the board. So as you know, the governor, he signed it a few weeks ago, Senate Bill 538, which covers an enormous amount. So I'm going to give you the briefest of briefest overviews if you'd like to meet one-on-one to discuss. But there's one item that we're going to concentrate particularly on. But the first one, so the bill is supposed to standardize eligibility across all types, which means in previous years, charter school students, there needed to be a seat at a school. Could they participate? Could they not? Homeschool students didn't have to have a seat. Well, now they've standardized that, which means capacity does not control participation like it did in the past. So, which means for sports participation only, all our schools are open. There is no more open or closed schools in the Polk County public school system. It means they're all open. There's still capacity to attend the school, but as far as participation, there is not. Limits where students can play. In previous years, they kind of controlled this, but there's still some restrictions. If a sport, and we'll take Hillsborough County, they don't offer beach volleyball or boys volleyball. So there's no opportunity for those student athletes to compete in those sports at all unless they add them. If they don't add them, then they can apply to an adjacent county, which we are adjacent to Hillsborough, and 9 other counties, which will pose a lot of issues and a lot of work in our department. But those student athletes will be allowed to play in Polk County if they can obviously get here and provide transportation. One of the things the Senate bill does, it restricts multiple school participation. Have we seen in the past, we've seen student athletes do cross country at one school, then do soccer at another school, and then do track at another school. What the lawmakers found out is, and we'll take algebra since it's one of the core content area, student athletes were doing algebra at one school, then they transferred to the new school, and either algebra, they're farther ahead, at the new school or behind, the student athlete would lose interest. When they go to the third school, same scenario. So test scores were declining. So now they've made it to where wherever you step on the athletic field or court on July 27th, which is the first official day of practice, that's going to be your eligibility for the year. The appeal process is no longer in county. There will be an appeal process, but I'll strictly go through the Florida High School Athletic Association. One other thing, students must play in their county unless they don't offer the sport, but we have several student athletes that came here in previous years that participate in sport. We're going to grandfather those student athletes in. One other thing the governor put in there was allow schools to charge a participation fee. So we're looking at, and that's what we're going to discuss here in a few minutes, the main thing of this we want to look at. We are allowed to charge participation fees for the private school students wanting to participate in athletics in the Polk County Public School System. It must be approved annually by the school board. We have to publish it on our website and what those fees are going to be. There's another thing in 538. Remember, this is a bill to save athletics. Booster clubs can supplement coaches' pay. That doesn't need to be school board policy, but Mr. Hyde and I will get together along with Ms. Collins, and we're going to finalize, and we'll present sometime that in August what our plan is and how to react. Doesn't need to be school board policy, but we do want to kind of take a stance on it. It's going on. It's been going on for years, but we'll go there. Require stronger oversight and record keeping. All non-traditional student athletes will be approved through my office. So then we will notify the schools of which student athletes are approved, so that way we don't miss a homeschool student, a charter school student, a private school student, FLVS, or those. It does address transfers to competitive balance. Obviously, this law takes effect July 1st, 2026. But the one thing that we're going to need your vote on is the activity fee that we can apply. So basically, we wanted to, the law states that a reasonable fee based on cost to the school not to exceed $400 per activity. So annually by July 1st, activities developed pursuant to subparagraph must be approved by the district school board or charter school board. Charter schools also have the right, if they choose to do so, to do the same thing if it's approved by their board. And we have to vote on it as an action item. So we would look to adopt a standard for non-public school students, a fee of $400 per activity. The funds will be returned to the school to assist with the increasing cost of operations. So in 25-26, our transportation fees increased, but we weren't notified, so Rob Davis did the honorable thing and kept our price the same as it was, but we know that our cost of transportation for athletics will be increasing this year. Security fees also increased last year, but they did not increase for the Polk County Public School System with Grady Judd. He basically gave us a year, but we've been notified that the security fees will be increasing for this year, even though they increased for everyone else last year. He gave us a year to plan and things. Obviously, with the rise of uniforms, cloth, equipment expenses, field and court maintenance, officials and umpire costs are increasing rapidly as we go. So the money that is collected from the district office will be returned to the schools to help offset some of the costs. We do have a plan to either accept check, credit card, or money order, and then that money will be given back to the school. Questions?
Thank you, Coach Talbot. We'll start with Ms. Wyatt.
It's been a long time since I'm this excited about a policy because we've been talking about this one for a while. A few questions.
Yes,
for charging, does that have to be set before the year starts?
It does. In order for us to charge, it has to be approved and set by the school board, so I think it's coming tonight.
Okay. I just wanted to double check that it was, because our board meeting's the day after first day of practice.
Unfortunately, every school district is doing today. What I'm doing is, I know Brevard County has already passed theirs. Pinellas, I believe there's an article in the paper today about passing theirs. So everyone is doing what I'm doing this month to do the same thing.
I just wanted to make sure we were good there. I think it's important to note that, especially with all of the state scholarships now, that every student is eligible for FEFP funding, which is how much we get per student. When we have students in sports, that comes out of their FEFP. So that is what we get to support them as a whole student. When students choose to take that money as a scholarship to a private school or as a scholarship to homeschool, we still get to pay all the expenses for football, which is really expensive, or cheerleading, which is really expensive, but don't get any income to help support that. So I'm thrilled to be able to level the playing field a little bit. I also am most excited that they have to choose one school, because we've had several issues over the past few years of students bouncing back and forth. My question is, if a student, for example, they don't offer a sport at their school, they choose to go, can they, if I go to a school that does not have football, I don't know that we have one, could I choose to go to my home school, but then play football somewhere else if they don't have student capacity?
So let's take like Lake Louise. So lacrosse is one of those sports in our district that took off and became popular once, and it's kind of declined a little bit. So the two schools that offer lacrosse are Winter Haven and Lakeland. So if you're a student at Kathleen High School and they offer every sport but lacrosse, then that student athlete would be allowed to participate with Lakeland in that sport only, and then still participate at their home school, and that wouldn't affect their eligibility.
If there's room at the school, they could attend Lakeland and play lacrosse and play all sports there, but they would have to be controlled open enrollment essentially to go to that school.
Well, controlled open enrollment, it used to be two different things, right? It used to be controlled open enrollment for a student to actually attend the school, and then there was controlled open enrollment sports participation. Well, with this new law going into place, that has separated. So the sports participation only will be directly from my office. It won't be through pupil accounting, so we can track all the student athletes and assign them to schools. There is no denial. I mean, the only way a student athlete would be denied is if I'm at Kathleen and I want to play football and attend Kathleen, but I want to play football at Lake Gibson, we would deny that because Kathleen does offer football. But they'll be allowed, if a school doesn't offer a sport, they will be allowed to go to another school of their choice, regardless of capacity to participate, but they would need to provide transportation and work that out.
If the school, because we had this issue a few years ago where a student he was a homeschool student, but was all set to play tennis at Lake Region. 2 weeks into the season, they realized he was the only person that was ready to play tennis at Lake Region, and so they collapsed that tennis program. At that point, would that go to FHSAA for an appeal? Is there a process that...
It would depend if, in a situation where they did not participate in any matches, then we would close the program and reassign, and then give those families and student athletes the opportunity to choose a school, but we would work with the schools to see who had roster availability. So we didn't send a student athlete to a school that they wouldn't give the chance to participate. So we would work with those families. If they play so many contests, then the FHSA will come back and say, sorry, so sorry, but those kids did participate. But usually we try to make sure that we don't get to that point, and we harp the schools if we're going to offer it or not, so we don't punish student athletes.
Okay. I appreciate that. I'm thrilled for you that you no longer have to deal with the appeals process, because it can be a lot, but it was in that situation in particular, which I think it was like 2 days before the first match, it was great to be able to have that local autonomy to be able to do what's best for kids as opposed to having to wait for an answer from...
Yes, Courtney out of my office notified our appeals team, and they were ecstatic that they no longer have to worry about that anymore. So.
And I think I may have one more question, but it's lost me right now, so but I'm thrilled for this policy.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Hi, Mr. Talbot. I have two questions for you. The first one is there's usually not loopholes, or I try to figure them out before they happen, and then we'll make it a policy, or even with legislation, they'll pass something at the state level, and then it'll turn into something else. So my question is, I appreciate the fact that those applications to play at a different school that are coming in are play for our people who are not at our schools to play, and the fee that's going to be charged is coming through your office, because I don't want... What will happen is the schools that have parents who are upset that their children did not make the team or did not make a position on the team may accuse us of taking outside players because it's bringing dollars with it. So you will be monitoring the school, so I can say I have faith that this process is being monitored, and we're not going to have a school that's 80% not the players that attend that school. Correct.
We can monitor it, but then again, obviously with with the school choice, and I mean, unfortunately, the rich will get richer. I mean, people want to participate. I mean, if I'm a basketball player, I would want to play for Coach McGriff and Bartow. I mean, that's just natural, or Coach Rutenbard, or, you know, Castle Lakeland, or whatever. So it's hard to control that, but we can at least monitor it, and we will have, according to the ball, accurate records of who's where and what. And the thing about with the fee, to people understand, because people get confused, the fee's not going to the district. It's going back to the schools, which goes into their internal account, which, and we all know with internal accounts, it has to be for the student athletes. So it's going back to the student athletes to benefit them. I'm not taking a dime, the district's not taking a dime, it's going back to the schools.
And that's the optics, and we don't want to, you'll hear you have that football school or you have that soccer team school, and they're padding those accounts with these outside dollars. I think that there's good oversight of this, how you have it laid out, so we won't see that. I won't name, we have some strong private schools who are strong academically, but probably not the strongest athletics, and especially certain sports. And so you will have parents who can pay for private lessons all day long and then go play at one of our Title I schools.
Right.
Is that going to negate one of our Title I kids not having field time? We don't know. This is new.
Yep.
And so it's kind of an experiment to follow. My question is, does our current private schools, which I know there's over 70 locally in Polk County, I think I was 76 the last time I pulled that number, are they charging, not all of them offer sports, because you can have a private school that can choose what they offer, but are those private schools that do have a sports team, especially strong sports teams, do students have to pay that are not students there, but do students from the community pay to play at those schools?
So in preparing for this meeting, I surveyed, and I don't mean this in a negative way, kind of our top 5 private
Right.
schools that we normally deal with. So obviously Victory Christian charges student athletes to participate. So if you're a student athlete, if you're a student is not attending Victory Christian, you can pay a fee to participate at Victory Christian. And All Saints is the same as well. With our other 2 major private schools, Lakeland Christian and Santa Fe, they will not allow anyone to participate unless you are actually physically enrolled in their school. So the burden then comes on us. But there are private schools charging, just like.
And thank you for sharing that, because I was unaware of that. It's not a secret that we were parents at All Saints at one point, and I didn't even know that was. But I know what the idea is. They're going to build their programs. They want to build them stronger, and they want to attract students. And to attract students, they have to have strong athletics, which may start with students that don't attend there.
Right.
That's very interesting. So thank you for sharing that today. So my biggest question and concern from the community is it'll be monitored how many outside students, because they're all our community, they're all our students, but outside students paying to play for some of our teams will go through your office. You'll have data tracking that.
Every single bit of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Allen?
Thank you, Ms. Collins. I should have submitted my full list of questions beforehand, so sorry.
Not a problem.
But you're hitting some of them along the way. We got the conference report from superintendent, and we sort of have an idea of how many students are actually, on the scholarship. But how many non-traditional student athletes would we have in our district? And this would just be private and homeschool.
Well, in my world, I wish it was just private homeschool, but you got FLVS, you got FLVS Flex, you got charter, you got private, you got PEP, you got homeschool. So that's why we decided to run all that through my office. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at last year, we probably had about 400 non-traditional student athletes participate with us.
Okay. All right. Good to know. And then how does the billing process work for a charter student comparative to a student that's at a private school or homeschooling?
So there is a lot of discrepancy in the law. So how the law's been interpreted to us by the Florida High School Athletic Association is we cannot charge homeschool students or charter school students. We can only charge the private school students. And we put it in there until we get clear direction from the FSA. I know they had a board meeting today, and they were going through the bill and the language and the change of the language. That's why in the presentation we use non-public. But we're going to follow the letter of the law for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we believe it's going to be just the private school students.
Gotcha. And then the flat fee. Obviously it's a nominal fee comparative to. and is the flat fee per sport. So there's not like a variable. So for example, if I play football comparative to running cross country, I would assume my cost is less but you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's less to run cross country comparative to, say, play football.
You know, we did an analysis, and it varies by school. Because
school?
some schools offer cross country, and then you got other schools that are traveling all over the state of Florida to participate up in Tallahassee and Jacksonville and St. Augustine's. So it's really hard to dial in like the number, because a lot of teams, you know, do travel around, and with travel increasing. That's why we wanted to keep it at that 400, and just because it's a challenge to figure, well, if you go to this school, they're traditionally not strong in this sport, so we don't have to charge as much. You know, we didn't want to get into that.
Yep. Okay. And then like the breakdown. So if a parent says, hey, can I see what the program cost is? You know, I'm going to invest $400. We've got a metric or matrix of some sort.
I can provide them costs
Okay.
that will
All right. Very good.
open their eyes.
Because I'm assuming parents want to, definitely.
Yep.
Hey, you know, where's my $400?
Well, they want to know where it's going to, and like I said, and that's why I wanted to be very clear that, you know, the money's going back to the schools. I mean, you figure, you know, security went from 45 an hour to 49 per deputy, and then depending on who you're playing and when you're playing, those, you know, number of deputies, and then when you have over a certain number of deputies, you got to have a sergeant there, and then last year we had games on Halloween, so that was holiday pay for the sheriff's department, so that was costly. So I don't know if we'll play on Halloween again, but we probably shouldn't anyway. With, you know, there's a lot of extra things going on that take away from the event, but you know, and then with transportation increasing, and then the officials, I mean, right now, you know, Lake Gibson's, you take Lake Gibson High School, their official fees were well over $60,000 last year.
Yeah. Can boosters provide a supplement to a family? Maybe there's a family in need that, you know, hey, this $400 is too much. You know, can the booster provide supplement?
That would be what, unfortunately, we call an impermissible benefit, which I do not recommend any school doing that, because
Just checking.
that will punish a lot of students. A lot of students had nothing to do at that school. That would be considered recruiting, and that comes with a 6-week, $5,000 fine. So we do not want to have booster clubs involved in this fashion.
Yep. Okay, so you got the number, the 400. So are they evenly dispersed? I'm just thinking like maybe could a coach be, you know, maybe in opposition of this because they have a high percentage of students that would be non-traditional that would be playing for them. Is this going to hurt them if they can't afford the $400? You know, then the equity of that. But just a random question that I was thinking about as well. I don't know if you looked at how the 400 students are dispersed per school.
They are varied by school and varied by sport. And unfortunately, a lot of the schools that are successful in sporting events do attract those student athletes.
Yeah.
Just, you know, no different than, you know, the academic programs, the successful academic programs attract those type of kids.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think on this one, that's all my questions at this point, and I think that the way that we're presenting it is this is not a punitive thing. We recognize the cost there, and just as Ms. Wallace noted as well, I mean, our team sports are recognized across the state and continue to compete nationally as well. So there's a high need there, and I think families want to be here with us.
And the beautiful thing about the way they set this up is we have to come back every year. So if it's something, when we come back next year to have this approved, if it's something where, 400 was probably too much, or we have data to support the 400, we can get, you know, accurate costs. And so when next year, when we come back to, you know, hopefully renew, or depending on the vote tonight, we can provide actual hard data. I can give you how much we brought in, how much school each got, where those kids went, and what programs they were at, and we can see.
Great.
And we can adjust. That's the beautiful thing about it having to be approved every year and published every year.
All right. Very good.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. My question was partially asked, but I have more. Ms. Miller mentioned, you know, students really filling those. Could we potentially have a team that's completely full with no students that actually attend the school? Do we have I know you mentioned, for example, with the tennis team, that we would look at the rosters in the nearby area to move that student. Do we have the ability to say there's already, the football team here already has 60 students signed up to play? It can only accept 10 more, whatever the number is, or do we?
We would
They would
provide,
have 120 students on that team.
yes,
if they
that's the
wanted.
only caveat in the FHA book is to say that our roster is full.
Okay.
What we tell schools is, once you close your roster is closed. So the 6'7" basketball player moves in from France, you remember your roster is closed. But we would work with schools. We would work with schools, but once their roster closes, it closes. But, the nice thing is, without capacity being a part of this, we could let families know going, look, I know you chose Winter Haven, because on the application form, they list up the 3 schools in choice of order. So if a student athlete, their family applies and they say Winter Haven High School, and we know Winter Haven's high school's full, then we can go to their second choice and then approve that second choice. So they will have options. So it's not just one school and gone, and then if the parents say, well, why wasn't I chose for my first choice, I got picked for my second choice, we can explain that they had no roster availability, and school choice 2 does.
Do they have to submit 3 options? They can't just say, I want to go to Winter Haven. I just foresee parents
The
saying,
form is online, so it's not required to list 3, but we do a good job of reaching out to say, hey, the rosters are full. Because right now, we don't know what rosters are what, so everyone's just automatically being approved. But once we get into the sports season, we have some late additions, we will make sure that if they only choose one, we're going to say those rosters are full, please choose another.
okay, thank you. Similarly to Ms. Miller, and I know Dr. Allen also mentioned it, I don't want to foresee a student that lives across the street from a school being told, oh, sorry, the roster was full before the first day of school, when they're a new 9th grader on campus and didn't know that they needed to go to practices in the summer, or how to get involved. That would be my fear of.
Unfortunately, it's like anything else. The student athletes that are actually physically attending the school are going to, hear the announcements. Hey, there's an interest meeting for this sport after school, and there's workout and conditioning. Like right now, we're doing summer basketball. Summer basketball ends June 30th, and summer soccer kicks in on July 1st. And then obviously all the other sports are conditioning year round, and we provide that information to families to get involved now.
Okay.
But yes, if you're actually attending the school, you have a better opportunity, to build camaraderie with the coaches and stuff like that. But, unfortunately, you can't control when the 6'10" private school kid walks through the door and, everyone's imagining the great things that student athlete could bring, or female student athlete, or vice versa.
Well, and even we're a family that moved here during Christmas break, and I want to play soccer, and now there's not room on the soccer team at the school that my parents have forced me to move to. Those are the types of scenarios that I would be concerned about.
Yeah, it's never been an issue. The only way that would hinder, in some states, like you take Georgia, they play softball in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the student athletes in Georgia like to play softball in the fall, then miraculously move to Florida and think they're going to play again in the spring. But the FSA laws forbid playing the same sport in the same season under 2 different associations. But we've never had an issue where a student athlete that moved in wasn't given the right to try out, and unfortunately, they'll be given that opportunity to try out, and if they're good, they're going to be on the team.
And then my last question, because Dr. Allen mentioned, can booster clubs pay for the waiver? Is there an I know I'm not asking. I don't want us to. I don't want us to break any laws. Is there any options in the law for us to establish an opportunity to waive fees based on socioeconomic status? So, for example, when we looked at the volunteer process, we have a fee for that, but we also have a process if it is truly an issue for the family. Is that something we could look at, or is that?
We 100% could look at an opportunity, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would be interested, if it becomes an issue, I would be very interested in us looking at, if you are below the poverty level and really need the assistance to be able to play, I don't want students to not be able to take advantage of opportunities.
Yeah, I don't think developing a policy, but obviously taking it by case basis. If you're paying $18,000 for a private school and you can't afford to play football, that might be something different. But I think it needs to be viewed on a case-by-case basis. And we're not, obviously, like Ms. Miller said, we're here for all the students of Polk County. We focus particularly on the public school, but, if you're a student athlete in Polk County, you're a student athlete in Polk County. And public, private charter, PEP, FLVS, now you're part of Polk County. And, you know, we need all our students and all our student athletes in Polk County to be great citizens to benefit the county.
Thank you. And I appreciate all of the jokes that you were saving up for today. So thank
Not
you.
a problem.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wyatt. Ms. Wallace.
Real quick, thank you. Very good job. And I'm shaking my hand like right on. So it's also no secret because I grew up in Bartow. I had older siblings play Bartow softball and Bartow basketball. So I've been around the magnanimous growth of both of those programs. And I remember growing up, and this was perfectly reasonable and normal for parents who wanted to give their children opportunities. I knew of families who sold their homes and moved to our school zone so that their children could play for a Bartow coach. And then I remember thinking it was bizarre and unfair that if a kid whose parents couldn't do that was couch surfing, that suddenly it was recruiting. And that was unjust and unfair. And so now we're in a very disruptive time where anybody can move. It is creating some questions and consternation and all that. But on the whole, I just want to thank you for embracing a 21st century mindset, because I don't want to live in a world where kids who can buy second home or whose families can buy second homes can move about the programs, but kids who couch surf or don't have the same resources can't. You know, and I'm willing to embrace the disruption, and I'm hoping that we'll get a new happy medium, and we have people moving here for all kinds of reasons, whether it's athletics or academics or otherwise.
I appreciate that. I am old school, as you may know, but so it was a challenge, but you have to take the punches. You're always adapting, and that's what we do. And I think, but when you think about what's at stake, and the stake is our student athletes, and regardless, you have to put your personal feelings and your personal agendas behind, and whatever they may be. And as long as you're doing what's best for the students of Polk County, then nothing else should matter or interfere with that.
Oh, and one follow-up is I know that there are private schools in other counties that recruit our athletes to move away. And then because we do a good job of letting our own Polk County kids find the best programs within the county, we keep them here too. And that's a win for our schools and community. So it works both ways. I think it's easy to focus on the losses sometimes in times of disruption, but I'm seeing positives too. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Davis.
I just want to add, this is a very complicated law. We are not bringing policy to you yet. The law does require us to approve, the board needs to approve the fees before July 1st, so that's why we're here. That's what you're going to be asked to vote on tonight. And the fees have to be related to the cost, so statutorily, we can't charge beyond what the cost. We were able to analyze and figure out that, yes, $400, the costs exceed far more than that, considering how much it is to participate in these activities. But we'll be bringing you, all these are great questions regarding our policies and how we do this. The law does say we have the ability to charge, which means we also have the ability to have a needs-based, discretion. So all that will be answered when we bring the policy. But today, what we're asking, because we're doing it back-to-back, is just the approval of the fee, so then we can go forward and publish it in time and be in compliance by July 1st when the law takes effect. And we'll be bringing you more policy, more procedure as we work through it all.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Chair, there has been a request for a break at this time. I'm not sure if you want to do 10 or 15 minutes.
Normally, we give the production team one ahead, so like it would be after this next item of business.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say do a what do you guys think? 10 or 15 minutes? Let's do a 10-minute break.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move forward with the next item on the agenda, which is the Hurricane Days calendar. I believe Mr. McNaughton is going to come forward and speak on that.
And then board and those listening, after this item of business, we will take a 10-minute break.
Good afternoon. Okay, this is something for the annual adjustment of calendar regarding hurricane days. So just to let you know, historically, Polk County Public Schools exceeds the minimum of 900 instructional hours every year. And so that's why in the event of school closure, Most times for us, it's hurricanes. We have petitioned the state to say, we do cover the amount of instructional hours and we don't have to make that time up. So like, for instance, students don't have to come back, whether during, in our calendar, we have, whether it's early release days to make up or Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, wherever it falls, we don't have to make that time up. So this actually provides a little bit of an opportunity. And so this is something the superintendent is pondering. So the recommendation, if the event that a district does not use any of these emergency closure, and it's typically we have 5, maybe 6 days a year. That's how many days extra we have with hours, not the minimum time, but days, but the actual time. We apply that, we can petition the state to go ahead and use these where students' last day could be earlier. Now, what would be the benefit of that? The employee expectations for 10, 11, and 12-month employees, it can be used for professional development. Like, there's a lot of mandates that we have through the state. For instance, one of it is the youth mental health first aid, which it's not only for it's anyone who works with students. So this could be cafeteria workers, bus drivers, not just teachers, counselors, school administration. It's all who do it. And it's really hard to get some of that time to go ahead and do a 4 to 6 hour training with all those. But it could be used for curriculum planning, it could be used for data review, school improvement, just a lot of the compliance that we have in the district. And again, this allows to maintain contractual obligations and increases some flexibility. And I think that's most of what I said. It's flexible, but it protects instructional time while supporting staff needs.
Thank you, Mr. McNaughton. Mr. Sharpless.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you, Mr. McNaughton, for presenting this. I know through my connections in FSBA, this is something that happened in Brevard County this year. They kind of did it like almost towards the end of school. One thing they did is they provided childcare because it wasn't much of a window for the parents to make plans. And so I would just highly suggest, I'm all for this. First, let me say that. But I would highly suggest as soon as hurricane season's over, we communicate with the parents and say, this is going to be your new end of school date. In addition to giving them at the beginning of school year saying, hey, this is the optional, but then making sure that decision gets made as soon as possible so parents can coordinate their childcare or have something where there's limited functions at the school for kids but don't require it. I don't know. That's totally up to you guys on the actual operation side of it, but just make sure parents are aware if they have to prepare for more childcare costs.
Absolutely. I know the intention of the superintendent is to get as soon as hurricane season is over on November 30th, and then we can start looking at our options.
Thank you, Mr. McNaughton.
Thank you, Chair Sharpless and Ms. Wyatt.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. My first is, historically, we have not been able to do this because of the 180-day rule. Has the 180-day rule gone away? Is it something that we are
With Brevard,
advocating to go away? We just are,
but we can petition the state with it. They
okay.
they can accept or deny with this.
So the process would be, there's no hurricanes by November 30th. December 1st, we submit something to the state saying, hey, we're changing our end of the school year. This is how many hours we have. It would take us to 178 days or whatever it is.
That's the general process.
And we would wait for the state. I don't want us to announce it and then the state come back and say, yeah, that's not 188 days, and then have a super confusion of.
Exactly. I know one of the things that happened during the summertime, actually happens in a couple of weeks, that we'll get with Mr. Darren Williams and Ms. Collins and myself will go through and we'll make sure of the instructional time and how much time we're actually dealing with. And again, historical, it's been 5 or more days.
Okay. I have 2 more questions.
Sure.
So I apologize.
No problem.
My second is, I've served on the calendar committee the past several years, and one of the things that always comes up is early release days, because as all of you know, they are wildly popular amongst parents. Would there be an opportunity to look at our early release days and instead of making them early release, make it a full day off for students and a full teacher work day throughout the school year? And I just would love to get feedback from both staff and families on, we've had requests in the past of, because you're in the calendar committee room, we literally looked at the month of October last year and like, oh, we don't have 2 5-day weeks in like a 6-week period because there's so many holidays or early release. Would there be opportunities to look at that as opposed to doing it at the end of the school year?
I think that would have to be something taken to the calendar committee. Those are bargained with it, and it's in our PA contract with our teachers. So I think that would have to go through that than just.
Okay. I was just curious if that was even something that we would consider as opposed to the end of the year. And again, if end of the year is where people would prefer them, I just know how many emails we get and offhanded comments of how much people love early release days. But my last question is, this year, I think for the first time, at least since I've been on the board, it was very apparent that everyone planned their end of the year party for the Friday before school got out the next week. So there seemed to not be a lot of attendance after Memorial Day just because all of the parties were beforehand, which I think historically when we've ended after Memorial Day, the celebrations have been after Memorial Day we're still here, we're coming back for that. My hope would be that if we do have a hurricane and are not able to cut the last few days, that we schedule our parties and things for the actual last 2 days of school as opposed to scheduling them a week early so students aren't coming, if that.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
So to some of the comments, I know Mr. Hyde had sent a proposal. I think some of those things that you're bringing up are addressed in the proposal, but particularly that after hurricane seasons, this would be brought back to the board for a vote. And then at that time, moving forward to presenting that to the state. Thank you, Ms. Wyatt and Ms. Wallace.
I generally support what the goals are here, and we're going to work with all of the team to make this possible. But I just wanted to put one little thought out there, make sure y'all had thought this through, is hurricanes may not be the only reason we could miss school. And so, like, if we had a unseasonable freeze in January and there were mass electrical outages or there was some other unforeseen circumstance, I'm assuming that I guess where I'm going is we get to November 1st, yay, hurricane season's over, we have this many days. Are we still in the position to move around like if something else happened in January, February, or March? Does that make sense?
I think all of us are very conservative on that. And
Okay.
we won't be playing it right up to the line and do the bare minimum, so.
Okay, because I hope it doesn't come off like I'm saying no just to say no, because I'm not saying no, but more like just making sure that we don't just totally exhale November 1st.
Always prepare for the what if.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. McNaughton.
Thank you so much.
So at this point, we will go ahead and take that 10-minute break. It's 2:09. Can we reconvene at 2:20?
Yes, this meeting is recessed until 2:20. At this time, I would like to call this meeting back to order and turn it over to Chief Collins to finish leading off our work session today.
Little and Josh McLemore from staff.
Should be this one? Okay, it's on now. All right. I always have technical difficulties. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Little. I'm the Assistant Director for Real Estate with Facilities Planning for the school board. This item is a request by the Polk Regional Water Cooperative to be granted a permanent easement on a district property as part of the Southeast Wellfield project, which is an effort to provide long-term water supply as part of Polk County communities. This has been an ongoing project with the Polk Regional Water Cooperative all throughout the county. And it's in partnership with the school board is warranted to extend those water lines to help facilitate that. This easement will only grant access for the construction and maintenance of the water line. It will not disrupt district functions such as parking, driveways, drive aisles, landscaping. If there is interference with these items, the agreement would require that the Polk Regional Water Council return those items to the same or better condition. The agreement also allows for potential for future easements with the water cooperative's consent. So here we have the site. You can see that they're proposing a temporary construction easement to the north, and then there is the easement area along the frontage of the school. The total construction timeline would be approximately 2 to 6 weeks, and they would do that during winter break 2026, spring break 2027, and summer break 2027. You can see the point of beginning is Avenue F. It's north of 10th Street North. And the easement itself would measure 25 feet by 105 feet vacant. There would be a temporary construction easement for the staging of equipment and materials, subject to safety setbacks, which would be 80 feet by 105 feet. And then there would be a construction easement of 25 foot wide and by 134.2 feet long, which is the frontage of Bethune Academy. There wouldn't be any impacts to existing infrastructure or school operations, trees, sidewalks, anything like that. This meets the strategic goal alignment for the school board for the equitable and efficient use of resources. If this did proceed, this would be heard again at the the July 28th board meeting. So this is just to kind of get some feedback. And I am available for any questions if you have any.
Mr. Keys.
So I was like, I have a question, I don't have a question, now I have a question again. So I'm like clicking back and forth. It was mentioned that there's an approximation of 6 weeks. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, it would be a 2 to 6 week, and they're going to try to do it in a timely fashion. But of course, once you're going into digging, and we don't always know what's down there.
Oh, yeah, especially there. And so my concern is that traffic flow in the area of that school is a real big concern, and if the project extended past the dates of where they had school, what would be the condition of the site during those times they had to come back? I just want to make sure that flow of traffic is, I just, basically what I'm saying, I don't want a bunch of silt fencing up
Of course.
for a period of months at a time until we get a chance to come back. So just making sure that access to and from the campus, especially traffic flow for student pickup and drop off, is not impeded upon if they had to come back was my big concern.
And we've had ongoing conversations with the contractor. They're very confident that that timeline is going to work for them. And that's been our big sticking point as well.
Okay.
And just to elaborate, with this kind of an easement where they're running this utility line, they're not digging into the ground. This is a directional
Oh,
boring.
directional boring, okay.
Underground. And we're talking 30 feet below grade. So good luck even seeing disturbances outside of where they're actually making entry at grade, and then they're running the pipeline underground.
Well, I appreciate that because when I'm looking at that one, I just see connecting of underground water. I didn't see the part about directional boring, so I'm not concerned about it all now. Thanks. That's good.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Wallace.
This is thank you. I was looking through the agreement, and forgive me if I missed this, but do they also, does the district have the right to coordinate on timing too? So if they came to us and said, we want to work in the easement and it was not just physically disruptive, but operationally disruptive, do we have the right to coordinate on timing?
I do believe that's part of the contract, that they do have to coordinate with us in a timely manner because we don't want it to interrupt school operations whatsoever.
Great. And then I have a question probably for Mr. Green. It has to do with liability, or whoever wants to answer it, is that in general, on any easement agreement, like let's say whoever, in this case, it's PRWC, but let's say somebody gets injured in the easement while they're there working, do we have like a umbrella policy for who's held liable?
The district does have an umbrella policy when there's invitees onto the property.
Okay.
That specific, if they're working on their easement, there might be language in the easement itself about who bears the risk when they're performing some, clearing duty or something to that effect. This is just a draft though, right? So we haven't.
Correct.
of it
Correct. And
currently-
this is just a draft. We're not acting on this tonight. We're
Okay.
just trying to engage with the board so we can go ahead and flush out these discussions now, and we'll come back.
Well, then I come from an industry where we have these conversations, and that's the only reason why I knew to ask that question. So it would be good to contemplate, because this is an unlikely but possible event, is that when and think about this for all easements too, moving forward, is that when there are individuals there at our permitted invitation and somebody gets injured or something happens or some member of the public is there because there's holes, gaping holes in an easement, to make sure that we're very clear on who is held liable and why, or what we're picking up, and that's contemplated in our agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Next item on our agenda, I'm going to ask Victoria McKenzie and Stacy Davis to come forward to update us on book challenges.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mrs. Collins. We are here because the superintendent has recommended that, his recommendation for 2 book challenges that move to the district appeal level, that those books, 13 Reasons Why and Check and Mate, be retained. So myself and Victoria are here to answer any questions that you might have about that, and I can provide you some background as well. So both of those books were challenged during this school year. They were 2 of 50 book challenges that we received this year, all at the high school level. 13 Reasons Why is found in 12 high schools with 119 circulations, and Check and Mate stands alone at 1 school with 3 circulations, but it's a new purchase in the 24-25 school year. The book was challenged, both of these books were challenged by the same complainant. And the reasons were that the material was pornographic, prohibited under section 847.012. The material depicted described sexual conduct as defined in section 847.001, subsection 19. The material is not suited for students' needs and their ability to comprehend the materials, and the material is inappropriate for the grade level and age for which it's used. So following our procedures, the high school media specialist team met and looked at the complainant's challenge filed on the state form. And they basically looked at the book, looked at the professional reviews, looked at the complainant's form, and determined that it did not violate any current district selection criteria or state statute, and that it needed to move to the school challenge committee. So at that point, we had George Jenkins review Check and Mate, and Winter Haven High School review 13 Reasons Why. And those committees looked at the statutes, the sexually prohibited content definition. They read the book in its entirety, both of those books. And when the committees met, they discussed their findings from reading the book, and both of those committees for Check and Mate and 13 Reasons Why voted unanimously that those books be retained in the collection. The committees are made up of, if you're not aware, of an administrator, the certified media specialist, student, sometimes with parent permission to be on the committee, ELA teacher, it could be more than one ELA teacher, and then I also said, yes, administrator as well. And so after that was made, the decisions to retain the books, then the complainant filed the appeal with the superintendent that they wished it be taken to the district level. So we formed the district appeal committee that met in the month of May. And that was made up of a certified media specialist, an ELA teacher, a social worker, and also a parent of a high school student that would have access to the book. And those committees, after, again, considering the statutes, reading the book in its entirety, met to discuss the book, and also voted that those 2 books be retained in the collection because they did not feel that it violated any of the sexual content definitions or had a reason to be removed from the high school collection. So moving forward from this point, we let the superintendent know that that was the decision of the committee, and then he brought his recommendation to you that those books be retained in the school collections. That's a little bit of background. Do you have any questions?
We do have Chair Sharpless.
First question I have is, when would this come before us? It's actually at a board meeting to vote on for retaining.
My understanding is July.
Okay. And my next question is, I remember last time, so I would have been relatively new on the board. We had like 4 or 5 books that were going to come in front of us, but then they eventually did not. But we received copies of those books so we could read them. I'm wondering, will we receive copies of these 2 books so that way we can review them ourselves?
I certainly can provide those copies to anyone.
I would appreciate it. Yes, thank you. That's my only questions.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Miller.
Hi, thank you for that explanation of the process. We've had this discussion before, and I think on more than one occasion, what we've created here has been duplicated and definitely complemented from other districts who approach this subject, this very delicate subject, with more of a chaotic approach than we decided to do. So I appreciate the process and the long planning of these committees. And the committees, when they meet, are open to the public. And do you have an attendance of people who may have attended those review committees?
Great question. So the complainant is notified by email or by letter of the date. It's publicly noticed as required by state statute, and we have not had anyone attend the meetings this year. Attendance has been much further down than it has been in previous years. Even at the district appeal committee, we only had district staff members in attendance.
I appreciate the district staff scheduling these, even though they're not well attended. I think it's important that we keep advertising it and make sure that the community knows about it. If this is a strong subject matter they're interested in, they need the opportunity to come. It is very interesting that no one is showing up. My next question is, as far as our process goes, how far in advance do you have to plan these committee meetings? Do you have them set in case books are challenged, or do you have to go out and plan them as things become challenged?
As books become challenged.
So you plan them as a need arises?
As the need arises.
Okay, thank you so much.
If there are no other questions, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, Ms. Jenkins is going to come forward and walk us through the certificates of participations of project finalization report.
Good afternoon, Chair Sharpless, Vice Chair Keys, board members, community. Today, I'm bringing you the major projects for 25-26 that we've discussed a couple of times so far. I just wanted to confirm that these are those recommended to move forward for our borrowing, the timeline we're on in order to be competitive with current rates and meet the deadlines based on the fact that we are ending our fiscal year. We've completed many of the documents for this process that will need to take place and occur estimated around July 13th. So if we do put this borrowing off, there are several things that we have to go through again. And one of the last pieces is just your confirmation that you're okay with these projects. Keeping in mind that when we invest in these, that frees up funding for other projects. And we're also able to make amendments at a later date if we would need to.
Okay, and so we have Mr. Keys.
Just for the public's knowledge, if anybody was looking, can you reiterate the Alta Vista project, because I know with the community they're saying there's been a couple questions that, hey, we see this on there, but Alta Vista's not there anymore. The building's gone. So they're just for the public's knowledge, a clarification on that particular project, the C354, and what that means.
Yes, it's a relocation, a new, we had opened Scenic Terrace, and has been used as a holding school, so it's part of the whole process that we are constructing and using that to hold our students until we construct another location, and then they move to that location, and then we use Scenic Terrace as a holding school again. So it's a new.
Because it's given the fish capacity numbers of that, which aren't reflective of what was Scenic Terrace, but is now the new home for Alta Vista K-8. I guess that's probably where some of the confusion came in.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? No other questions? Okay. But wait, there's more. Ms. Jenkins is going to stay, and she's going to take us through the reorg, which is the next item on our agenda.
Okay. Since our May 5th board meeting, there were some updates. We updated the documents, so I wanted to briefly go through that to make sure we're all on the same page. We did, I've uploaded all of these documents as well. So to summarize the changes that have occurred, if the board would like, for student program alignment, we've moved our homeless student services and our migrant special programs to two different areas. Homeless has been moved to acceleration and innovation for better alignment, and our migrant special programs has been moved under ESOL. We are maintaining a dotted line to our federal programs department because both of these areas are heavily grant funded, and we want to make sure that we maintain compliance. In our payroll department, we've all heard about our SAP upgrade and success factors. So in our payroll department, we're taking 3 existing positions and we are converting those to payroll and time management positions. So they are at the same level, they'll just have different duties to better align with the way our new system is going to work. Acting positions due to a leave of absence. As you all know, our Deputy Superintendent of Operations is out currently, so there are 2 positions that are moving. We are not deleting either of those 2 positions, the Chief Financial Officer or the Senior Director of Budget. The Senior Director of Budget will be placed on hold. That way, if that leave comes to an end, those positions can go back to their origin. So there will be a cost savings. I use the terms funded and unfunded because that's what the board has been used to, but it's not technically unfunded. My apologies, it's a savings. Administration of maintenance and facilities. Our assistant superintendent is retiring. There will be some organizational changes within the maintenance and facilities department, so we've decided to put this area on hold until those changes take place to give new leadership part of that decision-making process. So that division will remain as is for currently. Behavior and mental support, you will see a change in your documentation. That's because those positions were listed under ESE and they've been moved under behavior and mental support for better alignment. Career and technical education. We are adding a senior coordinator. It's also under teaching and learning. That will be to head up the STEM bus and CTE, so it may be housed in our teaching and learning section. Our Chief of Labor Relations. We are adding 2 personnel investigators, similarly to how we're making changes in payroll. There are statutory requirements that have increased for background screenings, and those personnel investigators are the positions that do head that up. So that's why we need that addition. Discipline. We had a lot of conversations discussing our grant-funded positions. I did go through those for our community outreach facilitators. I went through with our Senior Director of Federal Programs, and we reconciled that. The cost is only about $1 million versus $2 million. Several of those were split funded, and the way our reports come out of our system, it appeared that that was the total cost. It was an error. So the actual cost is reflected. Information technology, this is a change in area, basically no change in cost. It's just a change in the title from what was originally presented. Professional development, 2 full release mentors are being added. Those were unintentionally left off our prior spreadsheet. Risk management, we're adding a senior director of special projects, and we are putting the current senior director position on hold. We have a pending retirement, therefore, we're going to take this opportunity, along with a lot of the new consultants we've hired in our risk management department, to let this position focus on leave of absence, several different areas that need some attention, especially with our ERP upgrade, and also procedurally wise, and then also for a knowledge transfer in the interim between now and when our senior director retires. Are there any questions?
Ms. Wyatt?
you. I have lots of questions that I've had answered over the past week. I do, so thank you to your team because I know there were several things. It's when it's this much information, being able to process it and compare, especially when job descriptions are, if it's the same job description, it's redlined, but if it's a new job description, going back and forth comparing. So I appreciate your team's work and help on that. A couple of them that I just want to ask publicly to make sure is understood. One of the things that has come up is that there's several administrative assistant positions at the district level that are being upgraded. Can you share a little bit about just how PEA's contract was upgraded recently, and so can you share that information?
Yes, ma'am. Back in 22-23, there was a mandate, it was listed in the General Appropriations Act, that we raise all salaries to at least $15 an hour for minimum wage. In 22-23, we had, our PEA secretaries are in the ESP union. So the data I'm going to share with you involves ESPs and paras, which are at that level. Those positions were increased to meet this mandate between 3 and 36%. What that did is we got to $15 an hour, but it caused compression. So a lot of our long-standing employees were making the same as those employees that came in. So in 23-24, in order to address compression, we it's almost like an inverse. So we gave 36 to 3%. So our longer tenured employees received anywhere from 36 down to 3. That was our minimum, so that every employee received an increase to reduce that compression. With those job descriptions that are included currently, there are several senior administrative assistants within the superintendent's office that serve 2 folks. So, for example, the chief academic officer and myself share an administrative assistant. And there are various other areas like that. We've also moved all reception. So we have a couple ladies that answer our phone out front, and they deal with all our visitors. They're being moved under the supervision of what will become the senior coordinator of the superintendent's office, so that we have all communication flowing through the same place.
Thank you for that explanation. And just from speaking with Superintendent Hyde, that essentially brings those, because they cannot be a member of PEA, because many of them have access to bargaining information on our side of the table, that it'd be an ethical issue, that is why they were not included in that contract. And it's being brought now to make sure we're keeping it balanced.
Yes, ma'am.
I think all of my other questions have been answered. I do have some concerns, but I also, after speaking with the superintendent, feel okay. My my biggest push for moving forward would be this is a lot of information to digest. And yes, we get it in May conveniently this year. I think it was 3 days before the first graduation. And, May-Cember it really is the busiest time of year. And when we get it the morning of the board meeting or work session, it really doesn't give us time to look before we meet to be able to ask questions in a work session. So I would ask that in the future, if the goal is to approve it in June, that we get that information at the April work session, even if it's presented to us for the first time at the work session in April, that we get it at the April work session, even the latest April work session, to be able to have it at the work session in April and the work session in May, and then actually vote on it in June would be my preference, just because this is, it is a big lift. We have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that at all levels we're spending our money wisely. And it is a lot of information especially, we are not operations. We have to make sure that you all have the ability to do operations. And even, for example, when I had asked Superintendent Hyde last night about the senior budget position, which I'm glad to hear that we're not collapsing, because I would be very concerned if we did not have anyone over budget and that we were collapsing that position. But making sure that we get to ask those questions and really can do a deep dive, because there are a lot of position changes this year and every year, and we need to be able to have the time to truly go through that and ask questions, and then be able to. I know I learn a lot from my colleagues, so even just hearing some of their questions, to not have to immediately go back and vote 2 hours later. So that would be my request for moving forward. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Wyatt. Ms. Miller.
Thank you. Many of my questions were answered by the superintendent. He was still returning emails as of this morning, because this is a lot of information. I also like to formally request that this be done at a work session, given us enough time to review it with you, to hear the explanation for some of the movement. I am fully support of succession planning. I'm fully in support of keeping good people that we desperately need, but I need to hear the outcomes. How will these changes affect students in the classroom? When I'm asking questions about difference in or adding to our compliance staff, my real question is, why do I need this compliance staff? Why are we having an increase in issues with compliance? And I think the superintendent has done a good job of going back and trying to answer questions in a limited amount of time. But this is a lot of information. And if you're not in education, the public is reading this. And I'm not here to affirm actions from the staff and the superintendent. I'm here to understand them, because I have to go out in the public and explain this. And so that was the majority of my questions, were just trying to understand the percentage difference or percentage of increase, and the collapsing of positions just to, a lot of these assistant directors or, moving right past director, assistant coordinator to director, that's a process that I have to understand, and it's different for each department. So I really think it would do a service for the community and for the board to have these conversations in a work session, and not have to send 16 different emails from 7 different people. I think it would be better for you guys not to have to field that, as well as understanding from our community. But I think all my questions have been answered. I wanted measurable outcomes. I want to know how changing somebody from one position to another would affect a student, or affect our output. Not, the succession planning is important, but that's not the focus of some of these changes, and I think it'll do the community well to understand why we were making them. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. And Chair Sharpless.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins, for being here to field our questions. I sent in 14 different questions to Superintendent Hyde over this. It was just a lot, like my colleague said, a lot to digest. I do have just a comment and then 2 questions that I submitted to him that I would just like to put out on the record. But I will first say the fact that this is going to result in approximately $1.2 million in general fund savings. I like that. We're getting more efficient there. But it also has some questions on it caused me to ask some questions about something. So the 2 questions I have for you today that the superintendent has already answered in an email, but I want to hear it for the public. So the first one is, the reorganization relies heavily on unfunding vacant or existing positions to offset the cost of new roles and upgrades, right? Are there any critical departmental functions that will be neglected or slowed down by the removal of these over 77 positions?
No, sir. Part of the reorganization is better aligning the job duties to the work that needs to be done. So we have a lot of lower level positions that, based on there are new statute requirements, new ERP guidelines, new educational requirements, that we really need a different level. So many years ago, school districts and government agencies had lots of clerk-type positions because we were paper-driven. And now that paper-driven is moving away, we have to go into a different type of area. So no, we do not. And there are some in the higher visibility areas, like for example, our ESE department. Some of those positions are being redirected to contracted services so that we can ensure we have them filled.
All right, thank you. My other question that I would like to ask is that several role descriptions emphasizing maximizing Medicaid reimbursement. Is there a specific revenue target that the district hopes to reach through these realigned positions? And how will that revenue be reinvested into student services?
We have had a goal. Medicaid reimbursements run about 6 months behind, so you actually receive those 3 to 6 months after they are submitted. One of the guidelines with Medicaid is you cannot pay those salaries out of a federal fund if you seek those reimbursements. We have, I believe, almost doubled our rate. We're near $1 million now. So we are, our goal is to continue because that provides additional services as well. We're serving that student population. And we have set up a fund, just for technical, we set up a fund for Medicaid, and those funds are redirected to the department. I've met personally with Ms. Williams and several of her team. They come up with a plan of what they need in those areas, and then we distribute the budget, and they purchase those materials.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
You're welcome.
And Ms. Miller.
Sorry, I have one more that you mentioned, Medicaid reimbursements, because that's something that we haven't always done. We were a little late to the game in joining a few years ago. My question, and maybe it'll be for another day, but I would like to see where those dollars are flowing, because the needs are great in that ESC community. IDEA and all of the things that fund it. As a taxpayer, if we're going to bill Medicaid, I want to know where those dollars are being spent. So maybe we can have an overview of that. I can come back to your office once again, or maybe we could put out some kind of document. It would be a great time. It would be a great way to share how we're spending dollars and the high need that we are serving. Because what did we do before we were billing Medicaid? We weren't limiting services, so those dollars were coming from another area. So I think we should plan to have a review of how those Medicaid dollars are being used. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. And Ms. Fields.
I just had a couple of comments similar to what my colleagues said about all of the information that's before us. It's a lot to chew on. And being able to really dive down into it and making sure that some of the rationales make sense. Because at the end of the day, we all know it's about the students that we serve each and every day. My question stems from correspondence that I've received from some of the employees concerning the ESE department and concerning the addition of the senior position and also having the ability to have boots on the ground, so to speak, and making sure that the positions that we have that is not duplicated by other leadership positions. I hope I'm making sense. And so I think at some point in time, and I believe, and I might be wrong, I believe that I've had conversation with Superintendent Hyde about this as well, is whether or not we have had a climate assessment for our ESE department. And what kind of feedback are we getting from our employees as it relates to what the needs are and making sure that those needs are addressed as best they can. And so adding positions, how will the positions that we are adding benefit the folks that's actually working hard with the staff to ensure that our babies are getting the best that they can get. And so adding these positions, I guess the question is, how will this filter down to support the staff that's out in the field doing the work? And you might not be able to answer that for me.
Ms. Williams is here.
And if somebody can answer as well about, have we had a climate assessment? And if we have, when's the last time we had one? And if we were able to see the results of that?
We have had a district-wide climate assessment, but it wasn't specific to the ESE department.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I did actually send an email because there was a concern that came from another school board member. And so I did create a response, and so I'll touch on that because it addresses some of the questions that you had, if that's okay. So basically, in the reorg, what we try to do is make sure that there was a direct response to the multiple conversations that have happened with staff, and I think Mrs. Grimm will be, and Dr. Bruno may be able to speak to it a little bit more in depth because they've been in the meetings with the staff. There were concerns regarding workloads. There have been concerns regarding professional learning that's been provided, and the concern that we received a lot was that there were multiple staff doing multiple roles, and so we really made sure that we tried to streamline the way in which we set up our leadership team and the roles that we're going to do moving forward. And then along with that, they've worked really hard. The teams worked really hard as well to make sure that we set up so that compliance is addressed. There's parent support that's going to be involved in that as well. So for Senior Director Ekman, her team will be focusing on addressing district-based compliance concerns, program development, transition, pre-K, and then parent support, while Senior Director Bruno will be addressing instructional support to the schools. And so ESE teachers across the continuum of services, so some teachers will get support from job coaches, from instructional coaches, and some will get support from the senior coordinators. Director Grimm and her team will also support school-based teams with development of quality IEPs. That's been a concern that's been across the district for a while now. We do have Goal Book that's assisting in that, but we still have a long way to go in that area. So we're working through that to make sure that we're individualizing IEPs. And so there will be action plans that are going to be in place to include systems to make sure that all staff in place are supported, and that then we have accountability system in place that's tiered so that we can make sure everyone is supported. As far as the climate and culture surveys, I think there's been at least 2 this year. So there have been 2 surveys that have been done indicating that ESE facilitator and ESE specialist positions were too broad, and it required the staff in those roles to complete multiple tasks, like I mentioned before. And so this new plan will also allow ESE specialists to become more specialized in areas that are a concern based on data designed to reduce the workload. So it's to streamline what they're doing, and that was a response to some of the concerns that have been brought to our attention. There's also, prior to bringing this forward, we also asked staff to complete a strength-based survey so we could get some feedback from them. So they would provide some input and individual recommendations based on their specific skill set and based on what they're doing in their region. So additional clarity and training in specific areas we provided to each district staff member once ESE specialists are assigned roles, but it's also based on the reorg proposal that we're addressing today, and also preference feedback from the staff, and then also seniority guidelines. We're going to follow those as well. So did you want me to go into detail about the newly requested positions?
I think you kind of answered it
Yes, ma'am.
indirectly, I think one of the questions that I also have is, has there been an increase in state complaints? And if so, can you all kind of expound on that, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Pam Grimm. And this year in my role, I have worked with our staff to work through our state complaints, and we have had approximately 30 state complaints this year. So we are up about 4 or 5 complaints from last year. That does match the state trend, so it's not just Polk County that has seen an increase. There has been an increase across the state. But based on the data that we are receiving from our state complaints in terms of what our issues are, based on the work that we have to do, some of the state complaints, there are no findings, meaning we have done nothing wrong. And then with some of our state complaints, there are corrective actions that we need to take care of. So we're watching the trends for our corrective actions, and we are addressing trainings to address those trends that we're seeing in our data so that we can improve those issues moving forward, to make sure that we can have the right supports in place for our staff and then minimize those state complaints and the compliance work that we've been required to do based on that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Ms. Wyatt.
Thank you. And my question is actually still for Tammy, just because Ms. Fields mentioned the audit that we had done several years ago for the ESE department, and I think we've actually had 2 done in the past 15 years. Could we at some point just get an update on these were the recommendations that were made, this is what we've done for each of those recommendations? Because I think that accountability is really important to us as a district to make sure that when we go out and pay to have things like that done, that we are actually implementing them and how we're implementing them, or if there's certain parts that we're not implementing, why is that? So not right now, but just at some point in the next few months would be great to have that.
Yes, ma'am. I think one was done in 2007 and another one was done in 2019. That's my understanding. So yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
We will follow up. We'll review both of the reports and then compare it to what we're doing now. And it is a work in process, work in progress. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we recognize that. And we're doing our very best to analyze the data, make database decisions, and making sure that we're keeping students at the forefront, and along with parents and staff that's doing the work with the students and staff at the schools as well.
Thank you. I think it's helpful for us as a board to be able to see that, because then it helps us to justify, we need additional positions here because of X, Y, Z, and this is what we're not able to do that we were told to do 7 or 8 years ago because we don't have the resources. So it helps us to be able to justify that as well. So thank you.
And Mrs. Fields, did you want additional information about the positions that we added?
Excuse me?
Did you want additional information about the positions that we added, or?
If you have more to provide, that's fine. If you don't,
Yes, ma'am. You mentioned it, so I thought I would just address the ESE Senior Coordinator position is supporting the collection of data that Mrs. Grimm had talked about with the state complaints and making sure that we're addressing systemic concerns. And then we're also going to have audits so that we can make sure that we use the audit information to in turn provide professional learning to the staff, whether it's our staff or whether it's a school staff. And then I know there were some questions also about ESE facilitator positions, and we did not want to take facilitator positions from the schools after December, and so we have a lot of vacancies, but we're working to put those, to fill those vacancies so that we can make sure that all staff are being able to do their roles effectively. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Miller?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know how many other board members hear from some of the employees from the ESE department, but I hear from some quite often. And I think the biggest thing is just them feeling like they can share what their concerns are without being retaliated against, and being of the opinion that we might not agree, but it's okay to disagree as long as the end result is going to benefit our babies, our students. And so that's why I was inquiring about the climate assessment, because I think lots of times people are afraid and I'm not saying it's the ESC department overall. I think it's just overall, people are afraid to voice their opinion if they have to identify who they are, because they don't know what might happen after they have shared whatever their thoughts may be. And that's why I was inquiring about the climate assessment, to see what does it look like, and what are some areas that we might could strengthen, and what are some things that we're doing well, and what are some things that we could do better. So that's why I was inquiring about the climate assessment as well.
Ms. Graham, we can share the results. Yeah. We can review all of that data and certainly share the results, and then we certainly want to be transparent in how we can make sure that we're doing what's best for students and families. So, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I had one more question. Going back to the Medicaid position, Ms. Heather, when we did this 3 or 4 years ago, I think, it's been that long, it seems like we were doing it, we shifted from having a consultant, if my memory serves me correctly, to us doing more in-house billing, I think. And so I think what my colleague said would be very beneficial and valuable for us is to know what have we been able to, the resources that we've been able to gather since we are doing it now ourselves. And I think it's been, maybe 4 years ago that we shifted? So it'd be nice to know the trend from the first year that we did it up until now.
Yes, ma'am. There was, I know that Ms. Williams and her team have made a lot of improvements in the review of the program, and also Medicaid billing is a bit complicated. So we can definitely put that together and provide it to you. What's happened, what's changed, what it looked like before, what it looks like now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Miller.
Thank you. I just had a couple more things that came up, and Medicaid billing struck another. It's very important to see where we've come from, but I think where those dollars are going, what did we supplant what we do? Is there something new that we're funding? I think that would be important to the public. And I lost my train of thought, as Sarah Beth usually does, but I'm not a young mother, so I do not have an excuse for that. But my question, I think where we're at, and this is all departments, the pool of people who are very experienced in ESC is limited. It's limited because of retirements. It's limited because less people are going into it. It's limited because of choice has also taken staff to the private and charter sectors. And so I am interested mainly on those complaints. If they're up by 4 or 40, I really don't care if we meet the state average or we're with the state average. I want to know what needs to be addressed here in Polk County. And I think what our staff does well, and I'd like to see more of it, and this isn't directing you because I'm not allowed to do that, but I can ask the superintendent, who's not here but will be soon. I think our staff, the people I hear from, and I'm sure Ms. Fields and other board members, are the people, what I say, are in the weeds of this, who are doing it daily and sitting in meetings and realizing the person across from me may not understand the law, and they're giving information that's not 100% correct, but they're trying their best. I think we have a disconnect on the knowledge base, and that's not anybody in particular. It's just the subject matter is so difficult, and it's so many volumes of different things to know. I would like to see an online, and we've talked about this before, if I'm new to this role, if you've pulled me to be a new facilitator, we used to call an LEA, I've never done this before. Where can I go, not once a year, to sit in a room for somebody to talk to me? Where can I go online to pull things up and say, oh, this is how I can be useful? I think we're not going to be able to catch the gap up of experience until we provide some kind of training like that. And so I'd be interested to know what your survey said, because I feel like it's based in that we just have a lot of people trying their best, but that knowledge base is limited. So I look forward to seeing about the Medicaid dollars and what the results of the survey was. And I can tell you in 2007, I want to thank a mother and advocate, Debbie Hannafin, who's in our community still today, that pushed for that. For that service that we had come in. It was mainly about inclusion. It was how to include students. It also is way out of date because we were probably still in FCAT back then. But the one that Ms. Bird brought in 2019 would be very useful to see where what metrics we've met, but where we still need to go. So I also am looking forward to that update.
Okay, thank you. There are no other questions. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins and team. The last two items we have are information items.
Excellent. So we are now, sorry. Thank you, Chief Collins. Board members, if we could at this time, I would like for us to exit the work session and go to the meeting tonight's agenda for us to go over a review of the agenda, please. I'll give you just a second to do that in board docs. Give me a second. I'm sorry?
Are we skipping section D? Did I just miss that?
What is that? They're information items.
So we just don't discuss them. Got it.
Yeah, they're just informational items. If you have any
Still
questions,
learning.
that's
Thanks.
okay. All right, so now we all should be in our meeting's agenda for tonight. So I'm going to go through the sections. If you have questions, please signify that through our system, and I will call on you. So first, are there any questions for section A through E? A through E. Seeing none, how about sections F through K? Sections F through K. All right, I don't see any. How about sections L through N? L through N of our agenda tonight. Dr. Allen, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I was just curious on L8, was there supposed to be any type of documentation or anything on that agenda item?
Chief Collins, you're recognized. Do you know?
I do not know.
That would be Mr. Macklemore or Mr. Fix. Are either of them there or someone from the department? Can we get them back in here?
Wendy's
Okay.
trying to reach out.
Okay. While that's happening, are there any other questions in L through N? Are there any other questions in L through N? Miss Wyatt, you're now recognized, and we'll come back to you, Dr. Allen.
Thank you. My question and more comment is just on N3, the renewal for Incident IQ. I know we've heard a lot of feedback, and I know if for those of you that were able to attend some of the leadership training that Superintendent Hyde indicated in his opening remarks as well, that this is something that IIQ and how it has currently been used is something that likely will be changing based on a lot of feedback to make sure we're doing more in person, picking up the phone and calling each other. So I just want to make sure that it is noted that this is the 1-year subscription and that we use that for so much more with document storage and things like that. But we are, I think, at least as one board member, well aware of some of the concerns with not being able to just pick up the phone and get your question answered. So many of those systems they're currently evaluating how those systems play out, and that is why this is on there for renewal. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Wyatt.
Mr. McLemore is on his way back in.
Okay.
To answer your question.
We can move on, and we'll come back to this, okay? So our next section, there's no other, anyone else for L through N? Seeing none, we will go to sections O through T. Sections O through T. Anyone for O through T? No? Okay. How about section U, action agenda? Are there any questions about the action agenda? Okay, section V, public hearing. Is there any questions on the public hearing tonight? Mr. Fix has made it, so come on down, Mr. Fix. You got a question. Board Member Allen has a question for you.
Thank you, Chair. The question was the amendment that you're proposing on L8. There's no documentation on that. Is it the only change that's been done to that district priority project list is just this one item? There's been no other change?
That is correct, sir. Now, and it ties to, if we're going to spend CO and DS funds, that's when we have to make sure it's on the project priority list and bring it to you. So as we identify something that we might put on that, use that funding for, we'll bring that to you and make sure it gets on that project priority list. That is a state requirement to spend CO and DS funds.
Okay. All right. Just, wanted to get my eyes on the list to make sure, right? Because the document's actually not there in the agenda item.
All right. Yes, sir. We can get that.
Board Member Allen, is that?
Yeah, that's all I have, Chair.
That's all
Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Keys?
That brings up a question for me then, is that as those projects would be identified, they would be brought to us in addition to that list, is what we're saying, and we would discuss them at that time?
Anything that we might spend CO and DS funds on, there's a state requirement that it goes on the state calls a project priority list. It's a specific thing that DOE has. So we would bring that to you all and make sure that that is on that list. It's kind of, it sounds strange because every capital project we bring to you is on your project priority list, but this is something specific that the state deems it. And if we're going to spend capital outlay and debt service money, which is a very, generally it's a very small pot that districts get of money from the state, then we have to make sure that it's on that list.
So yeah, I guess my question was, so we bring up a situation, an unforeseen, so to speak, old piping, and we have a situation where you have to remedy those quickly, that if it were added to that PPL, which would be a priority, that we would receive notification that there was a modification to that list, and we would have a discussion on it as it was added to that list.
It would, or if it were such an emergency, what we might do is use another funding source, but then bring it to you and say, we would like to use the CONDS money. If you're okay with that, then we've got to put it on the project priority list for your approval.
You hit the nail on the head that you would bring it to us. That's the only thing I was asking. Okay. Good.
Are there any additional questions for Mr. Fix on L8? Thank you, Mr. Fix. We appreciate it. All right, now we'll go back to our, we were on V, public hearing. Is there any questions on the public hearing tonight? Seeing none, we will then have our superintendent's report. Chief Collins, do you know if Superintendent Hyde will have a report for us tonight?
Depends if he's back or not, but yes, I believe we will. Yes.
Okay.
I will.
Either you or Superintendent Hyde will. Okay. Thank you, Chief Collins. Mr. Green, it looks like you have something for us in the attorney's report tonight.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay, excellent. We then have our auditor's report. Ms. Matthews, you will have an auditor's report for us tonight. Excellent. And then we will wrap it up with our board comments. And just so everyone's prepared, on our board comments, we will go in district order from 1 to 7 tonight. I never want to spring it up on you, Board Member Miller, if I go the opposite way, so that way you know we're going 1 to 7. And then we'll have our public comments. Are there any additional questions on the agenda? And I'm going to recognize Board Member Wyatt.
Apologize. Mine was on the attorney's report. When we spoke earlier about the policy hearing for today for advertising for July, the policy that we spoke about earlier in the work session I don't know what's on that list for July because it just says authority to authorize. What policies are we authorizing, and is that included?
It's going to be 5722 that was discussed today.
Okay, so we're still, even though we're looking to amend it, and we're going to bring it back to back then to amend it?
Well, I guess that's a big depends. So it depends on what the amendments are, whether they, it depends. So the text as written would be the version that would be advertised. And then in the interim, if we can get the amendments done, ultimately, I think it's up to the board whether it approves those amendments, whatever that language might be, and whether they want to just take the current version as is, get that sort of on the books, and then tweak it later. It's hard to know without knowing exactly what the amendments might be in the future.
I personally am hesitant when we know we have amendments coming to us, which really aren't amendments if they are presented to us. Historically, we have workshopped things at the work session level before we put it on the board meeting for policy. And you and I have spoken about this. It is much cleaner to do it that way before voting on it and trying to do all of the amendments in voting. I don't feel good about putting out to the general public, this is the policy that we're going to be voting on, knowing that we are going to bring amendments that would change that policy at a work session and not giving them
The notice,
the time between the two. It just feels disingenuous to me to not present what we're actually going to be voting on. But that is me as one board member, so I would love to hear from my colleagues. But I would prefer us wait till August for that topic if we are having
That's a possibility.
more things come to us.
Board wishes to do.
All right, do I have any other board members wishing to speak? No? Okay. Any other questions about the attorney's report? Board Member Fields, you are now recognized.
I wasn't here earlier. Are you talking about the amended policy that Dr. Allen proposed?
This is, yes. Board Member Wyatt, you are now recognized.
Thank you. The policy that we looked at in the work session was, I believe it's 7522.
5722.
Sorry, 5722. And it has to do with how we share the student publication, both student publications and performances. So if it's a student newspaper, how can people access it? We discussed as a board that what the recommendation was really making sure that all of those publications are just for the school community unless otherwise noted. So we're not putting out our daily news show on YouTube for anyone to watch, those types of things that are more broad. There were one of the concerns that I brought is that we're seeing a rise in people, we can't take pictures of students that don't have a waiver, but we'll have a school post and say, hey, post all of your pictures from the event yesterday. And so now other people are posting pictures of students at these events that we've locked down to make sure that we're not sharing students' information broadly. And so we had discussion about bringing some revisions back. So the thought was to bring them back in July. My concern is if we bring it back in July, we discuss the policy likely between 12:30 and 3 o'clock. We decide as a board we want to make a change. Then how are we noticing that to members that may want to come and speak for or against it at 5 p.m.? It just seems disingenuous, and I would rather, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something, is my opinion. So that's where I'm coming from.
Board Member Fields, you're recognized again. If you had any additional comments?
I would agree with Board Member Wyatt that if it's not necessary for us to do back-to-back, and we can allow more time, especially if the public has any input. So that's just my take on it.
Thank you, Board Member Fields. Are there any additional board members wishing to speak on this? Board Member Miller, you are now recognized.
Chair, are you asking for some kind of consensus? Because the attorney has already said that it does seem like best practice not to give the public enough notice to come and give their input.
Yeah, I was seeing what the will of the board was for that. There's no vote, but I was looking for a consensus either way. Board Member Miller, thank you.
Yeah, I would appreciate the public having as much opportunity to give feedback as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Miller. Board Member Wyatt, you are now recognized.
Thank you. I guess my question is, it is on the agenda that we would have to vote on it tonight. Do you want us to vote it down, or can we pull it from the agenda if it's not something that we're ready to discuss? Because it will need to come back to be noticed at the next meeting, and if we vote it down tonight, how does that play into being able to bring it back?
So I'm sorry.
July, sorry.
I did not mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
So, it is not in the public hearing, but it is under we're voting on the attorney's report. So that would have to be something that, with the motion would have to be made tonight, that we, instead of, having that public hearing on July 28th, it would be on August. I'd have to look what date that is. A board member would have to make that motion during the attorney's report. So either way.
Historically, if it's something that we decide in the work session we don't want to do, we've just pulled it from the agenda, so it's not, so that we don't have to deal with the changing of the motion or
So
amendments.
are you requesting that it get pulled from the agenda?
I would request that it's pulled from the agenda, if that's, yes.
All right, thank you. Board Member Keys, you're now recognized.
I don't want to speak for everybody, but it seems like that's a consensus at the time. If we wanted more time to discuss that, we would pull it from the agenda.
Are there any other board members who wish to make comment on this? I would recommend that it get pulled from the agenda, Attorney Green, and be put on the work session agenda for next month.
That's fine.
With the potential amendments. Yes, that we discussed.
That would
earlier.
certainly give the staff more time to work on an amendment, because it's either do that, or then we've got between now and 5 p.m. to try to cobble something together, which is not it's not an impossible task, but it's a tall hill. So, yeah, if that would give us more time to do that.
Okay.
If you'd like to do that, okay?
Yeah, we can put it on the work session for next month.
All right, very good.
All right. You are welcome. Is there any additional comments on the meeting tonight and the agenda? I do not see anything. So now I'm going to give you a moment to come back to our work session in Board Docs so we can go through a couple more items. So please transition to the work session agenda. All right, now that we're done with our agenda review, we're going down to item F, unfinished business. And for that, I'm going to recognize Mr. Green.
All right, so just to go over the history of this, so at the last work session, 0147 came up, if you recall, that had to do with a policy related to compensation. There was some language that was added to that policy, and during the work session, there was a discussion about removing a particular parenthetical. At the board meeting that evening, there was a vote to remove that parenthetical. Then there was a second motion by Dr. Allen to make a specific addition of a sentence. The board wasn't comfortable at that time at taking that action. That motion didn't pass. And so a question was asked, how could that potentially be brought up again? Because there seemed to be an appetite to reconsider it, just not at that specific moment last month. So this agenda item was added so that the board could have an opportunity to review it, look at the language that was being proposed, and have time to think about it. So that's what that's about.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Green, now we're going to open up for comments on this this item. So Board Member Wyatt, you are now recognized.
Thank you. My question is more just on process, not specific to this, but we did update the policy without the amendment last time, correct?
Yeah, so the version that is before the board tonight is without the amendment that's being proposed right now at the work session.
So my question is, since we did update the policy in, that was May board meeting, it is not currently updated, like the,
No, I'm sorry, it took effect, so the public hearing was last month, and it will, the board will vote to approve it this evening, I believe.
without, okay, so it has not been approved without the amendment. We
Correct.
just voted for what policy it was that, okay, that was my question,
Yes.
because it's still saying adopted
Correct.
2013 version is what's in policy. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion on this unfinished business? Dr. Allen, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think based on Ms. Fields and your requests from last meeting, that you like to see it in writing. That's the process that we've gone through. And it's a friendly amendment, and it's a voted upon initiative, not necessarily a consensus building. So I think everybody can have a voice on it. I think in today's environment where every tax dollar is under scrutiny, I think we have an opportunity as a board. And just reflecting on the expansion of the usage of our funds for membership beyond just the one recognized educational association, I'm in favor of that. So I'm not questioning the intent of the policy that we've now modified or will modify. I just think I would be more comfortable supporting it if we paired it with stronger transparency measures is really at the heart of this friendly amendment. So that's why I brought the language forward. I do think with term limits, I would say our board's going to look way different in 4 years based on term limits, and then I think 6 years as well. So we're adopting this bylaw that's going to be applied to a different board. So my concerns are that if we open the floodgates on different types of associations and things like that, there's not like a sense of accountability and transparency for all board members to know. So I'd hate for a surprise to happen. So that's really at the heart of this friendly amendment. Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Board Member Fields, you are now recognized.
Thank you, and Dr. Allen, thank you for listening and coming back with something in writing. And I did read it, and I have no problems with what is being proposed. But I do appreciate you putting it in black and white rather than reading it on the DS. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Fields. Board Member Miller, you are now recognized.
Yeah, I just want to, off of what Ms. Fields is saying, I think this is how we do things. You have to have work session time to be able to discuss this. I think this is already done, but it might be a procedural, and if we need to place it in policy to make sure it continues to be done, I think that's favorable. I think the superintendent explained last time that there is a reporting of those dollars, but that might not be in writing. So the fact that we're going to document it to make sure it doesn't change as we move along, I think is important for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Miller. Board Member Wyatt, you are now recognized.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. My one question is, because it talks about presenting them during the budgetary meeting, many of the conferences and things that we go to, we may not know about. And I mean, when we're talking about budgetary meetings, that's in 3 or 4 weeks. The conferences that many of us plan to attend, like even FSBA for next June, we know about when it will fall. We know about what time it is, but what happens if they change venues or they move location or and things, expenses go up, things change. So that would be my only concern is just, what's being presented in the budgetary process, is that from the prior year? Or are we looking forward saying this is what we're planning to do, and that there's a mechanism that if opportunities come up, things like that, that we're allowing for that flexibility, that we're not locking in, you can't do anything if it's not submitted by July 1st. Does that make sense? I don't know if there's an answer to that, or if our attorney can tell us what this would mean.
I would interpret that, it could be clarified, but I would interpret during the budgetary meeting for the current calendar year. So I don't know when that falls in this year, for instance, if it's the same month every year?
Yeah, is generally in July, I believe.
Yeah, so that would be when,
That's when our fiscal year
that would
begins.
be when the report would be, report summarizing all expenditures during the budgetary meeting, so that would be in.
I guess my question is it a forecasting report or a summary of the year before?
It's it says here, a report summarizing expenditures associated during the meeting, so that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Wyatt. Dr. Allen, you're recognized.
Yeah, that would give me an opportunity. The way that I foresaw it was an opportunity to do a summary. And it's not necessarily related to our travel. It's specifically related to the change that we brought in this policy in regards to membership and associations, like those fees, not necessarily like our travel expenses for those associations or.
What we're members of.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And then I do have one more just for you, Chair, more procedural, right? Because, so in the meeting tonight, when we get to public hearing, and this could be more for Mr. Green as well, I know we had talked about this, I'll call for the amendment. The amendment would have to be voted upon, and then we would vote on the policy with the change. Just want to clarify as far as procedural.
Yes, absolutely. That
Okay.
would be the correct procedure.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Parliamentary-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it, Dr. Allen?
Yep, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Board Member Keys, you're now recognized.
Not to drag this on any further, but I was just going to say is, as we have the amendments in there, they look like it took into account everybody's comments on it. And like Ms. Fields, I appreciate seeing it in writing to a chance to be able to review. And then my final thing was going to be something I already answered. That's the way I understood it too, is a summarization of previously spent monies for transparency. We did the prior year, not forecasting what would be coming up. So.
Thank you, Board Member Keys. I don't see anyone else on the speakers. Oh, the attorney, you now speak.
Yeah, just to close the loop on procedurally, so if the motion is raised to amend this policy and it's adopted, then I would request authority to advertise that. It would be, its implementation would be then pushed out a month, so the public would have an opportunity to look at the current version, since this is a substantive change, not a technical change. So to the extent that the attorney's report maybe was removed, I would need to have a report to advertise that.
Gotcha. And then I also, that would change the motion on which, if I were to read all the policies, I would remove that policy out of the one that I read.
Yes. Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Absolutely. Is there any additional comment? Seeing none, we will now move to new business. Just a discussion, the half-cent sales tax appointee. So let me see here. Is that your appointee? So I'm going to recognize Mr. Keys to just discuss the appointee of Chris Long.
Yeah, so this would have been to the half-cent sales tax committee. As Ms. Stripling in our area had stepped down, I think this was kind of presented a while ago, and procedurally we just needed to get on the agenda. Mr. Long is a longtime member of the community, professional gentleman, very civically involved, and so looking forward to the opportunity to present that at tonight's board meeting.
Thank you, sir. And whenever we go for that action agenda item, I will be calling on you first, so you can discuss it if you want to read the letter or whatever you would like.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And if anyone else after that would like to have comment on Mr. Long, then the floor will be open for that. Okay. All right. Now we have board member comments on. Oh, is that for Mr. Long? It was. Okay. Sure. Sure. Go ahead. Board member Wyatt, you are now recognized.
For Mr. Long, but I appreciate you noting that it was Travis's appointment. I don't know that it's, I was trying to get back to the work session because I had bounced around. It did not say on the agenda item that it was Mr. Key's appointment. It actually credited it to you being the contact. So I appreciate you designating that it was Mr. Keys. If we could just, in the future, I'm assuming it was his because he's chair, but but whose appointment it is helpful, just knowing area.
Yeah, that would be good on the work.
I would support it either way, but
Well,
know.
it does say,
I really thought, Mr. Sharpless has had a lot of appointments lately to this committee.
to be fair, at the actual agenda for tonight's meeting, it does say Mr. Keys, but on the work session agenda, it says me as the contact. So either way, that's okay. Thank you. And the last thing we have is board member comments. Do we have any comments about any of your liaison positions? Please, if you do, please signify. Okay, seeing none. With no further business to come before this meeting is adjourned, and we will go directly into our discipline meeting. So please. We have to wait till 4? Okay. Okay, so we'll wait until 4 o'clock for the discipline meeting.